Good evening and welcome to the Cabarrus County Board of Education's work session for Monday, September the 12th, 2022. I will call the meeting to order and welcome those that are joining us live stream and those that are here in person with us. And I would ask that we start with 2.01 and all stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. And at this time, we need to observe a moment of silence for a CCS staff member that we have lost, Mr. LaTanya Lofton McLean, and I'm thinking that's Ms. Thank you. Ms. LaTanya Lofton McLean, if we can honor and observe a moment of silence, and our thoughts and prayers go out to her family. Thank you. Ms. McLean served as a 5th grade teacher and an MTSS coach during her years at Weinkauf Elementary, and once again our thoughts and prayers out to the family and the friends. Next we will move to 4.01, which is adopting the agenda. May I have a motion that the September 12th, 2022 work session agenda be approved as presented?
So moved.
Second. I have a motion by Ms. Adcock, a second by Ms. Blackwell. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, that motion passes unanimously. Next, we will move to 5.01, and we will begin with the board chair comments. First, we would like to acknowledge that we have our attorney, Mr. Jay White, at the dais. Dr. Kopicki is under the weather, but he is with us teleconference. Dr. Kopicki, can you hear us?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. All right. So first of all, we would like to say thank you to our SROs that are here with us tonight and every meeting. Thank you, and we appreciate your presence with us. We would like to also acknowledge, since Dr. Kopicki is not here to do so, the RISE 2022 sponsors, which were the businesses that sponsored the staff development that took place here for our staff at Cabarrus County Schools. So I will just list those: Ascension Solutions, Ben Minot Family Dealerships, Synergy Entertainment, Epic Events and Rentals, North Carolina, Fairway Mortgage Company, Just Because Gifts, Boxes and Boards, Noor Real Estate Group, LLC, Roy and Wanda Williams, Team Honeycutt, Allen Tate Realty, and Zion Church Concord. And we just wanted to express our appreciation for those that sponsored that event that was so beneficial to our staff. Next, we are going to begin with or continue, I guess, the discussion over an email that we have received and from a group that has questioned and asked for some attention be given to some procedures that on a board policy that we will be approving or tabling tonight at the pleasure of the board. So I just want to make a couple of comments about it before we actually go a little further, and just for my own self, because as the board chair, you know, we get a lot of emails and I have to address them personally. And sometimes, you know, I'm a little concerned over the amount of time and attention that we put on something. And I would ask that that email be placed on the screen, if you will, in any version, PDF or otherwise. Okay, great. So this is the email that we were talking about at the last meeting, and per one of the board members, we got it loaded to board docs. And it states, and you can read it at your convenience, and it's also loaded for the general public to view as well. So this tells us that this email now is being sent jointly by 132 Cabarrus County residents, the majority of whom are parents of students currently enrolled in Cabarrus County Schools. It says this email is a continuation of the communication that commenced when nearly 40 people signed a letter sent to the school board in early August that was then discussed extensively during the CCS board meeting on 8/8. If you can you go all the way down? We felt like we needed to acknowledge those folks, if you will, since it's such a vast list. So that list is on there. I'll let people just read that at their leisure. And now if you'll circle back up This is a summarization of what has kind of taken place as far as this group is concerned, and this is involving and surrounding our Literature and Supplemental Materials Committee. So, what we want to say is there was some question about were there questions answered at the prior meeting, which our board attorney addressed, and what we've stated that there has not been another meeting, which will take place on September the 20th, and I'll let Ms. Blackwell give us some additional information during her committee report. But the majority of these questions, and if you'll circle back down, one of the guys back, yes. So there's a list of 10, okay, and it's just really given some, some parameters that they would like to see reviewed before we actually approve policy 3200 and 3210, which is on the board's agenda for tonight. I think the concerning piece for me, that what is out there is that this committee is banning or pulling books, removing. This committee has not done that. I want to be abundantly clear that that is not what this Literature and Supplemental Materials Committee has done. What they were charged with by this board was to address policy. And that's really what has taken place, and therefore that's what is on for tonight, which has already gotten a prior approval from the last meeting, but will be up for second read tonight. So that will be the discussion before the board during that time frame. One of the issues that I really want the general public to understand, this has taken up a lot of time addressing some of this that really should be at the right place discussed with the Literature Committee. Okay, that's how this is what it was created for. The process had either not been being followed or was not being followed consistently at different campuses. So this is why this committee was created to begin with. There were lots of issues out there of things that were coming before our attention about materials and books, and this is the whole reason why it was created. So to say that we haven't been transparent is just not true. There could not be more transparency involved in this process than anything else that we've done. But one of the statements that was made, and if you could circle down to where I'm not sure which one it is. It's probably under one of the listings for when it says the proposed policy updates, if you can see that piece of it. Yes, right there. So the statement that I want highlighted is, it states that, to be clear, and this is from this group, to be clear, we are not in favor of book bans, removals, or relocations under any circumstances. That's broad. And it's broad in the way that we need people to be really clear why some things have been pulled for review. And this particular book is going to be one that will be the example, and we'll start the process for this Literature Committee to take a look at. So Ms. Blackwell, being the chair of that committee, has graciously agreed to read a couple of excerpts from the pages that has caused all this turmoil. We understand that there are a lot of views, and we respect that there are a lot of views in our system on what's accepted, what's tolerable, and what is not. And there's a lot of controversy around this right now. So we want to read these couple of pages to give and unfortunately, we want people to understand right now, so that you're prepared, that this is very graphic, it's very detailed, but it's very important that you understand that this is not over-exaggeration. This is what was in some of our libraries, and it's the reason why it needs to be reviewed, and it is a very hard place for us to be right now. So with that being said, if there's anyone out there in the viewing audience that has small children with you, if you would like to take a moment to make sure that they're not present for this may be something that you would not want them to hear. And we'll give you just a few minutes, and then I'm going to ask Ms. Blackwell to read a couple of excerpts from those pages.
I have a comment. Sure. If there are children in here or younger folks in here, they may also need to be asked to leave the building as well, or leave this room.
That is a great statement, and I don't see anyone. We have high school students in here, of which these books are currently at, but if there's anyone in here that thinks that would be offensive for our students that are here tonight, if that's a problem and you feel like that would be something that you do not want to participate in, you're more than welcome to actually step out into the hallway at this time.
I have another comment.
Sure.
I have a 15-year-old who is also a high school student, and I would want someone to call me and let me make a decision as to whether or not my child should stay in here. What I'm saying is, if we have high school students that are in here and we are saying that what we're getting ready to read is not even appropriate to be at a high school, we should be asking someone's parents if they are okay with their kids being in here to hear what we are about to read. So I do not feel comfortable leaving children in here under the age of 17.
So how about I just go ahead and ask for our student interns that are here tonight for you just to step out.
And can you explain what why is it necessary to talk about graphic things that are in this book when we can reference it? And I don't think we need to read the language that's in this book. There's no reason for that.
Well, when the statement was made that there was no exceptions of what was being, and I hear you, Mr. Walter. Okay,
I think you can kind of.
We all talked about this last time. We have been working with since early April. So for people to understand the severity of what we're actually looking at, I think it is important at this point in time because it's still being talked about, and we are having to continuously talk about this every week about what's being done with this literature. So I think it is important, unfortunately, because it is in our school system. So these kids at any point in time can pull this out and check it out without anybody's approval by a parent at that point in time. As much as I have said, movies have ratings. There has to be a parent available or a guardian with someone under the age of 17 to see an R-rated movie. We know this is definitely probably a little higher rated than that, and there's no policing that in our school system. So,
okay. Well, this board member doesn't think you need to read it explicitly at this meeting.
So
I don't either.
I will query the board members, and I will ask our board attorney his legal opinion on reading it. I'm good with anything. We felt like this was probably important so that the general public understood that there was no over-exaggeration and that there probably should be exceptions to why things get pulled without the process that we have not identified yet with this literature committee because that was not their task. So I will query the board members whether you would like to have it read publicly or not, and I'm going to begin with Ms. Adcock.
I think it's important for the public to understand. I know that sometimes they're just people that get on a bandwagon and they want to make a decision and not really understand what we are having to deal with. I'm okay with some of it being read because I think it's important for us as a community to understand that this is not what we want in our community.
Ms. Carpenter?
I agree, and one thing, this committee had not had chance to meet, and this is in the schools right now, and the superintendent at this point had been given authorization to take something out until we could meet, and personally, I do not want this, and I'm going to say it, this filth, this obscenity in our system until we could meet. And I think that we need to let the public know what is in until we can have the system in place. And I think we need to let them know what is there. And this is the way we can do it.
Okay. Ms. Blackwell?
I think that in order for our community to understand the seriousness of the material that we have in our school system, this is exactly what we have been discussing and talking about, and whether it is vile and disgusting and has absolutely no place in our school system. I'm embarrassed to have to read this out loud, but I'm even more embarrassed that it was in our school libraries. And so in order for people to understand truly what we're talking about, they need to be able to hear this out loud so that they can be just as appalled as I think most of us were when we saw it ourselves as well.
And more importantly, this was read at several other school board meetings and will probably be read for us next Monday night. And that cannot be, curtailed. It will have to be honored that person wants to read this at public comment next Monday night, that will have to take place. So, Mr. Furr?
I agree with the other three board members. This is This is a community problem. We've denied the fact that this material is in our schools, but obviously it is, and it's time to just put it out there what we're dealing with. And after you hear this, and this is not the only book, but this is just one of probably many, but I think this is a statement that the majority of this board is not going to tolerate this. And we've made comments that this wasn't in Cabarrus County Schools, but it is in Cabarrus County Schools. But we're going to deal with it, and we're going to do our best to get rid of this.
Mr. Walter.
I think sharing the title of the book and the pages, people can look it up for themselves. We just approved a policy last month that has procedures for this. And one of those procedures is if somebody objects and are denied, they can bring it all the way to the board. So they now no longer can bring it all the way to the board if we're going to talk about it. So I think that ruins, we're already not following the policy that we just approved last month.
So what we're going to find is the policy procedure or the process that we have started, it's not been final because we haven't approved it on second read, has some flaws in it. So there's some problems that's going to be discussed when we get a little further into that part of approval, and that being one of them.
I understand that. I mean, again, obscenity and filth, we don't need that in our system, but I think a reference to the book name and the page number would be just fine.
Ms. Sandage?
I don't think this board needs to share filth in any capacity. So does that mean if we find books in our libraries that have pornography in them, do we need to put that up on the screen for the viewing audience to see? This is just my personal opinion, again, as a mother of a 15-year-old. If that's the case, we should go to the libraries in every single school and pull all of the books and read everything that's in all of those books if we feel it is filth. I do not agree with filth in our school. I do not agree with somebody showing my child filth in the school. I don't agree with any of those things, but I also don't think that this board needs to show potentially children that are going to watch this or read to children who are going to potentially watch this recording filth. I don't think that it's this board's place to do that. But I hear what the rest of you are saying. We're all entitled to our opinions, and that's mine.
Mr. White, I will end with you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. In regards to reading it, I don't see any issues with reading it. I do believe that if this book comes to the board for review through the process, then the board needs to be fair and impartial in regards to the decision whether the book should be removed or not. So the context of the policy is to read the entire book and put not just 1 or 2 pages or however many pages or sections are going to be read, but what's the context of the whole book as it relates to the educational suitability of that book to the school system. So that a lot of legalese, but the bottom line is there's nothing wrong with reading it. The question is, if this book comes to this board, would the board members be able to be fair and impartial in making a decision as to whether the book should be remain or removed based upon its educational suitability?
Well, I think we're a little past that.
Well,
unfortunately, I think we've bypassed that. And that's what we've talked about is this book will go, that will be your first task is this book. So, there's just been so much time and effort spent on this. When a time when we are really needing to concentrate on learning loss and the start of the new school year and getting kids on a better educational path, we're spending a lot of time on vetting this committee. This committee has really taken some hard knocks. And I think it is good for the general audience to understand what is going on and why there's been so much time placed on it with the literature committee. And that there's people out there that evidently support, and they were very clear in stating that they are not in favor, and there's no exceptions, that there are definitely 2 very hard position sides. So with that being said, I'm going to take a show of the hands, and Ms. Blackwell, are you still comfortable reading those excerpts?
I would say comfortable is a relative term. However, I do think it's important that our community understand what we're speaking about. And again, I do want it to be understood that, and I don't know if this is the right place for me to say this, I do want these policies to be tabled so that we do not approve these policies tonight. I do think that we need to vet the process better. And it was this book that brought the gaps and the holes and that attention to this, which is exactly why my job on this committee is to not do this quickly, but to do it correctly. And so if we identify that there are gaps that are missing, I will always err on the side of caution to take that back to the committee and say, we need to address this further, we need to look at this further, we need to do this correctly. So with that said, I will read this excerpt again, giving the disclaimer that if you have children in the room, I think you should probably have them removed.
Before you read that, I just want to make clear that what this literature committee is not the committee that makes any final decisions.
Correct. Yes.
It is the request to a school from a parent as to the suitability of any educational material, and then it goes through that process. So the committee would be looking at this book just as an understanding about how the process would work, how the process could work, and what goes forward. But the literature committee does not make a final decision for this board.
Correct. And all decisions that are made are done by this board. We're the one that has the ultimate vote on this.
And understanding that because we had not gotten there with the charge to the committee for the new process to be reviewed, that we found out that the process is the problem, that it is flawed, and that is the issue. So with that being said, board members, I'm assuming we still have everybody pretty much a majority. I know I've got two that do not. Mr. Furr, all good? Okay, Ms. Blackwood.
All right.
And can I just make clear, I'm not saying that I approve of the content that is in this book. I'm saying that I don't feel it's this board's job to release this type of filth into the public. Like, we shouldn't be taking ownership of the filth that's in this book, and I feel like reading it
Actually, we are
does.
ownership of it because we're the board, and it is the taxpayers' dollars that have given us the monies that we do purchase books, so we actually do have ownership of it.
Well, I'm not taking ownership of it.
Well, I understand that, but it is the board that truly is the ultimate party that is our budgets are the ones that pays for these materials to be purchased, bottom line.
So if the board is taking the responsibility of every single book that's in the library, all of the books should be pulled at that point. If there is a likelihood that there is filth in our libraries, then all of the books should be pulled, because we're saying we're responsible for the books that are in the library.
Well, anybody
so
that
again,
gets
I'm not
sued-
taking ownership
Right, that's
for
okay.
filth.
We hear you,
in
and
the
you know
book.
what? Because more than likely, a lot of these books were in these libraries before any of us got back on the board, or maybe was even here, who knows. You're right, but at the end of the day, if there are any lawsuits that take place, one side or the other, we're supposedly violating First Amendment rights or freedom of speech, that may be one group that's looking at that, that's the position they're taking, or that we're distributing pornography, and we've been told very clearly by our board attorney that absolutely could take place. So yes, ultimately, if there's a suit, it is us that's being sued.
Okay, so Madam Chair, this was a parent complaint. Did they fill out the form? Did they go to the school?
Well, that's
How
what
did it get,
we're going to
how
talk
how
about.
did it get to where we're at now?
Well, that's what we're going to talk about, because that's the process that requested that to take place, and we're just going to put it out there tonight, has asked that the child's name be listed on the form. Well, there was not anyone that was willing to fill that out and put their child's name on there for there to be any type of future questions about which children were a part of these, one side or the other. So that'll be part of the discussion about the process that with the policies being approved, that there's some issues and why it probably does need to be tabled and go back to the policy committee. Are we all good? Okay. All right, Ms. Blackwell.
I've just never given one, she answered, her little voice dripping with seductiveness. It was so brazen, I thought I would explode. I never thought, from Alaska, hearing the stuff was one thing, but to hear her sweet little Romanian voice go so sexy all of a sudden. No, I said, I never have. Think it would be fun? Do I? Yeah, you don't have to. I think I want to, she said, and we kissed a little. And then with me sitting watching the Brady Bunch, watching Marcia, Up to her Brady antics, Laura unbuttoned my pants and pulled my boxers down a little and pulled out my penis. "Wow," she said. "What?" She looked up at me, but didn't move, her face nanometers away from my penis. "It's weird." "What do you mean weird?" "Just big, I guess." "I can live with that kind of weird." And then she wrapped her hand around it and put it in her mouth and waited. And we were both very still. She did not move a muscle in her body, and I did not move a muscle in mine. I knew that at this point something else was supposed to happen, but I wasn't quite sure what. She stayed still. I could feel her nervous breath. For minutes, for as long as it took the Bradys to steal the key and unlock themselves from the ghost town jail, she lay there, stock still, with my penis in her mouth, and I sat there waiting.
Thank you. Okay, so we're pretty sure that everyone gets why there's two very hard position sides regarding this book. And that is going to be the first charge back to the Literacy Committee for review. So with that being said, board members, any other further comments or discussion? Ms. Adcock?
Did the superintendent remove this book?
Mr. Walter, I asked for Ms. Adcock.
Oh, sorry, wrong.
Ms. Adcock?
The only thing that I wanted to just state as, factual is that how many parents was that was on this? 147, is that right?
I think so. There was 140 added, is what I thought that email said. Yeah, 140 added.
So out of 35,000 children, if they have two parents or guardians, that's 70,000 parents that are in our school community. So that's less than 1% of our parents that have this problem with what we're doing with the Literacy Committee. So I think that's a very small number.
Thank you. Ms. Carpenter?
I think that material, I do not feel that the majority of our parents in this community would want their children to be subjected to that type of material. Now, I don't think I am wrong in that assumption. I know that I would not want my children or my grandchildren subjected to it, and I think it's our responsibility to make sure that the materials that our children that go and put their hands on a book, that it is the type of material it should be. I think it's what the people of this county want it to be, and so that's just the way I feel about it.
Okay, thank you.
And so, and that's our job.
All right. I'm going to pass you or unless you will have another comment. Okay. Mr. Furr?
I have no comment. I agree with both Ms. Carpenter and Denise. No comments. There's really nothing to add to that. Enough's been said.
Okay.
All right, so I'm sorry, mentioning earlier, but did the superintendent remove this book from the school? Is it in multiple schools? Do we know?
Well, it's actually just being sent back to the committee, so
So it's not been removed yet, or it has been? Can I get an answer to that?
Okay.
What happened, Mr. Walter, is when the book came to the attention of the superintendent, the idea was for the literature committee to review it and to understand the process and understand, are there any additional matters? Because at the time that the first email came up, I don't remember the date of about the first email, but it was about the same amount of time. So the answer to your question is the books have been removed in order for the literature committee to review the book and understand the process and understand whether the policy needs to be changed at all.
Okay, so the books are out right
Excuse
now.
me?
The books are out of the school right now?
Yes, sir.
Okay, is he going to do an investigation as to how the book got there in the first place, where the failures are? Obviously somebody reviewed this thing and thought it was okay prior to. I think we need to do an investigation to figure that stuff out.
That is what the Literacy Committee will be charged with.
That's a superintendent job.
Ms. Sandage?
I don't care if it's one parent, two parents, three parents. I know as one parent, if I have a concern with anything that's happening in the school system with my child, I'm going to say something, and I expect an answer. We're here for every single last parent and every single last student and every single last staff that is affected, and even this community is affected by this district and what happens in the district. I do feel like something outside of what we're doing right now needs to occur because, like I said earlier, there will be more books. This is not the last book that will come to us in this capacity. And I'm going to just say this again. We don't need to be, and this is me speaking for me and being a part of this board, we don't need to be the ones sharing filth with the public.
So I need to know the way this works when there's a problem going on or a situation. What takes place is the board appoints a committee to address the situation. That is how we figure out what we need to do. If board policy needs to change, if there's a process that's not working, that is the action the board has to take. That's what we did. We created a committee, appointed a chair, we appointed people to that board. It's a very diverse board, and that's what they're supposed to do. Number one, they had to vet the board policy to make sure that the policies that are in place or what would need to be changed were there first, because that's the only thing we have. That's our rules. That's how we operate. That's how the school system operates. It's off of board policy. So that job's done. Now the problem is when they went back to figure out why the process was not working, it's because it's so variant from different campuses. The document that we thought being filled out, people were deciding they didn't feel comfortable doing that. So now the process that's supposed to either back up the board policy or figure out that there's an issue there is the problem. So that's what we've got to deal with. So that's why that should go back to the literacy committee. But am I hearing y'all say you don't think the literacy committee is the appropriate? Because that is the board's committee that actually addresses the problems when we have those. And that's the way it's always been done, and that's how business is conducted on this end. What are you saying?
Are you asking for clarity from me for
Yes.
what I just said?
Yes.
And I said this several times, so I'm sorry if I didn't say it clear enough. I'm saying that we almost allow children in here to hear the filth that we're saying doesn't need to be communicated or available to children. That's scary to me as a mom of a 15-year-old. That's the first thing I wanted to point out. So I don't feel like it was our place to read filth and give that filth that we're saying is not needed in our schools to the public and potentially children that were sitting in here. That's the first thing. The second thing I'm saying, there is a possibility for a lot of materials like this to be in our libraries. And if we are going to take the time to read filth and then do nothing else about all of the rest of the filth that's possibly in the schools, why are we doing this right now?
But we are. That is the point. The board has got to give direction back to that. That is the whole point. The board now, tonight, has to give direction. It has to come from the Board of Education back to the literacy committee to vet the process. They were only charged with doing board policy. So now that's been completed. We'll either pass that or table it tonight. But the process that's supposed to be what is followed, just like when there's a grievance. There's a process of how you follow board policy and how you do a grievance. Same thing here. There's going to have to be a process of how you follow board policy of whether these books or any materials or anything else that they're looking at is viewed and how it's taken care of. There's no other way to do it unless you feel like there's a different type of process that we need to.
Yeah, I feel like I've been clear, Holly. I'm going to just
that's
leave
fine.
it at that.
That's okay.
Thanks for seeking clarity. I made my
That's
comment.
okay. That's
Can
all
I
good.
can I make a comment as well?
Sure.
Thank you. So transparency, that's a word that I hear quite often from many different people in this community. We are being extremely transparent. This book was in our school system, and I am transparently reading it to you. And I am transparently saying that 2 of them were actually missing. And I'm wondering where they are, but my guess is they're probably under some kid's mattress. So if that's the kind of crap that we're willing to put in our schools, if there's one of these, chances are there's plenty more where that came from. And if there are groups out there that are willing to say that under no circumstances do we need to ban or remove any books from our school system, and you think this is okay, I have a problem with that.
Well, let's go read all the books that are bad.
Well, let's
Because
just
that's
let
what
the
we're
Let's
saying we're
find
gonna
them.
do.
That's what we've been asking
That's what we're
for.
saying
Let's
we're gonna
find
do.
them.
I'm
Okay.
not saying there's an issue with us having books and pulling them. I'm saying there's an issue with us conveying filth to the public. That's not what we're here for. We are here to make sure our children are safe and make sure our children are learning. How do we ensure their safety if we're sharing the filth that we're saying we need to be pulling from out of our libraries? If we're sharing it with them as a board, and we almost did that with children in the room. That is my problem. We don't need filth in our libraries. I totally agree with that. I don't want my child reading that stuff. I hear you on that. What I am concerned about is that we just shared the filth that we don't want our kids to be hearing publicly.
So where do we draw the line?
We draw the
do
line with
where-
approving a policy. We
Okay.
draw the line with listening to our constituents, listening to our children, listening to our parents.
Well, some of the
That's where we draw the
constituents
line
are
at.
fine with this.
Okay, now I'm going to call the discussion one at a time, and I think we probably have vetted this enough. The deal is, it needs to go back to the literacy committee because the process is the problem. There's a process that evidently clearly is not working, and that's what the board needs to give you direction on tonight, and that's what we're going to discuss when we get there. So for that being said, I think everybody is very clear on their positions on what has taken place, and we've done what we felt like we needed to do for people to understand the seriousness, that this is not over exaggeration. You know, there is a very serious situation for this committee to take a look at with some of these books that are out there that we really did not know were there. So with that being said, I think we've discussed it quite a bit. We'll carry through this conversation with that when we go to the board of approval for policy 3200 and 3210. I just think it's very important that we say everywhere we monitor what kids are exposed to and what they're subjected to. And I'm not so sure we had the right position in place here or the right process to be doing that on our end, and that's what we've really got to take ownership of. So with that being said, I am going to move to Superintendent Comments, and we're going to ask Dr. Kelly Probst to come to the podium, who will be speaking on Dr. Kopicki's behalf.
Okay, in education we call this moment a transition. And Ms. Blackwelder, Ms. Grimsley, you said to concentrate on a new school year, addressing learning loss, and moving forward. So I hope the rest of this meeting has exactly focusing on that. So good evening, Madam Chair, board members. On behalf of Dr. Kopicki, we'd like to share with you and our viewing audience a glimpse of our first day of school. A special thanks to our communications department for capturing this first day. Well, board members, we are off to a great start. During the first 10 days, it's been encouraging to see our students and community interacting inside our buildings again. As mentioned, we just completed our 10th day. We have 34,610 students and 4,390 staff. Last week, we announced our beginning Teacher of the Year, Natalia Mejia from C.C. Griffin STEM Middle School. Natalia is an ESL teacher at C.C. Griffin. It's hard to believe, but Wolf Meadow is wrapping up their first 9 weeks this Friday and will start their fall break through October 10th. If you watched that video closely, you saw a lot of pics of Dr. Kapicki. He answered the telephone, he served lunches, he read kindergartners, and he has been in our buildings for the last 10 days, and so have other district leaders. Dr. Kapicki is especially thankful to the board's continual support for our students and staff. Dr. Kapicki has requested this evening that 3 of our district leaders give updates. At this time, I'd like to introduce Art Whitaker, our transportation director.
Good evening. First of all, I'd like to talk to you all today in about 3 different categories. First, the fleet. I'd like to talk to you about how stable the fleet is. Then I would like to talk to you about bus operations, and then I would like to try to address staffing. So first thing off the bat is our reliability on our school bus fleet is absolutely wonderful. We are receiving very low calls for service. I could not be prouder of the guys that work in the back, all the mechanics and everybody making sure that we have the safest buses on the road. So I'm very pleased with that. Excuse me. I wanted to address one concern. I did receive an email from one of you that talked about, or they have seen some news clippings about a school bus fire that was in another district recently, and that happened to occur a few years ago. But that particular type of engine model is a Max Force 7, and that's what the news story is all about. But I would like to tell you today that we have combed the entire fleet over, and our Max Force 7, we only have 2 of those buses in our fleet. And I can tell you that both units are at the garage. They are inoperable, so they will not be put back into service until we receive some kind of resolution from the manufacturer or from DPI. So I'm pleased to report that. School bus operations. The name of the game here is progress. We need to make progress each and every day. And I can tell you that we've made a lot of progress. We have made a lot of progress in 10 days, as Dr. Probst has indicated. Today is our 10th day. We're going to make more progress in the 20th day, and we're going to make more progress in our 30th day. But I can tell you we look a lot better today than we did the first day of school or the 5th day of school. So I'm very pleased with the progress that we're making. We need to get to the point where we can run a reliable and steady schedule. That is number 1 goal. One of the questions that I did receive was the wait list. Apparently there's a wait list for transportation. I'd like to point out the fact that that is a very fluid number. That is a number that's very hard for me to get up here to tell you because of the fact that over the weekend we had 20 requests come in for transportation at West Cabarrus alone. So what I would tell you today, the planner's going to go in, the planner's going to try to assign those children, as many as they can, to the bus and get that bus rolling and wipe that backlog out. So if I told you today a number, I'm afraid I would be telling you something that wasn't true because they're coming in and we are handling them as fast as we can. The average wait time, I did receive a question about our average wait time for when we do have to run the double. We're running the double route to basically clear out the backlog of the children that are waiting there. So short staff, we have to run the double, and we're running anywhere between 10 and 50 minutes on a delay. And I tell you that is because of the fact that it's a geographical location. If we're in the city, I can run a double really quick, 10, 15 minutes. I can be back at school. If we have a large area, such as a Mount Pleasant, or a bigger area, such as the Northwest area, it's going to take us a little while longer to circle back around and get those children. So anywhere from between 10 and 50. So I'm going to say the average is about 35 minutes there on the delay on the double. I can tell you that our staffing levels, I polled our transportation planners this morning, and we have 20 open buses to fill immediately. If we could get 20 in, that would be wonderful. To stop the doubles, and that is the goal, is to stop the double routes, we would need 24 additional school bus drivers. So I'm going to put those two numbers together and say that we need 44 bus drivers. I think that's been a pretty consistent number that I have reported to the board. 44 would basically get us back to where we need to be. I would like to point out one thing to the board. We need to make sure that we have growth drivers. We need to be, we brought a new school on board. We're going to be bringing new school on board. We need to be able to make sure that we have that growth. And I would need about 14, 15, 16 drivers every year additionally to keep up with that growth. So I just don't want you to get comfortable with a number and say, okay, Art, well, you got that same amount of bus drivers coming in. Well, I need that plus whatever we need for growth in the district. So that's I do have some encouraging news on that. We recently received 25 potential candidates for school bus driving. They are being vetted right now whether or not that they are going to be allowed to take the bus driver training class. So I'm very happy that we do at least have about 25 people in the pipeline there that we could potentially have to be bus drivers. Some of them also too already have their CDLs. So that's wonderful. That's a plug and play, and that's a bonus for the district. I have received a question about overtime, and I can tell you that I have not personally told anybody that they cannot work overtime, so I don't know where that's been coming from, but we do ask if you're going to work overtime to make sure that you get the authorization from your supervisor. So I did payroll this morning, and I saw a lot of people with over 40 hours on there, so that is in our district. I would just ask that if you're interested in working the overtime, make sure we have that authorization in place prior to you doing so. Once again, it's a 10-day number. We look a lot better than day 1, day 5, day 9. We're continuing to show improvement. We're working diligently on all fronts. I went through the staff there in the garage in the routing department, and we have 134 years of experience routing school buses. So I have confidence in each and every one of them that they'll be able to do their jobs, and we just need some additional resources. So that's about all I have from transportation.
Thank you, Art, and we know this is earlier than the standard 20-day count that we usually get that information, but knew it was really important. So I'm going to open up the floor for discussion, and I will begin with Ms. Sandage. Any comments or questions?
Thanks for answering all of my questions, and thanks for being so responsive to all of the emails that I've sent you and reaching out to parents individually. I truly appreciate that. The only question I had, I asked about the wait list for the buses, and what I understood is there is a wait list for a child to get on the bus because we don't have enough bus drivers. But what you're saying is that wait list is specific to them waiting to get assigned a route. I hope I made sense in that one. What I'm trying to figure out is if I decided today I want to put my kid on the bus, there is a specific wait time already. I think it's 7 to 10 days that you got to wait for assignment. But is there a wait list to even be getting an assignment for a bus?
No, what we try to do is we take your request, and if we can put you on an established stop and there's room on the bus, we'll go ahead and assign you a bus. We just ask for you to get to that temporary stop, because what that might do is it requires us to reroute the school bus, which messes everybody else up. Their bus passes are all wrong, and so we try to only push out updates about once every 10 days. So that keeps some consistency on some of the transportation levels. So if you're on the bus or you have a request in for that bus, we can basically, if there's room on the bus, you can get to an established stop where there's already kids, we'll go ahead and assign you a bus right then and there. The problem becomes is that I do know the majority of these requests are less than 5 days old. So we're having a tremendous amount come in all at one time. So we're working from the latest to the newest. So if you were one of those first that needed a bus at the beginning of school, it's 10 days. You should already have your bus, because we went through a big bus rerouting just recently. So we're working our way down through those requests. So we're working on the first ones first and the last ones last.
That clarifies it for me. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Walter?
I'd also like to thank you for being responsive to the questions that you get from us, and there's quite a few of them at times. Get a lot of feedback from the public on transportation. So the bus capacities, or are we running at full capacities on these
We're
buses?
running almost at full capacity, yes, sir. Well, we're still monitoring the loads. We will not go, if it's a bus that's already full, we know that there's no sense in adding any more students to that, but we're actually getting those load counts every single solitary day that they come in. So there are a lot of buses that are at capacity. So, but if there is a bus at 41, 42, then we know we have room that we can go ahead and start adding children to those buses. So,
All right, so
I would say the majority of them are filling up rather quickly.
So we're pretty much full capacity.
Yes, sir. Quickly approaching.
Mr. Farr?
Yeah, thanks for the update. I don't want to put you on the spot, but what can this board do for you?
Well, I think it's been pretty clear that every district around us pays basically their school bus drivers more. We definitely need to look at being a competitive pay. I think if you really, we just need one thing. I've talked to Mr. LeGrand numerous times. I said, me and you wouldn't have anything to talk about if it wasn't shortage of bus drivers. So if you really want to help the transportation department, whatever you can do to help us get some bus drivers in here, that would be greatly appreciated. That's our number one need.
It's a true statement, I think, that the surrounding counties, such as Kannapolis, pay their drivers more than we pay ours.
Yes, sir.
Is that correct?
Kannapolis took some of our drivers away from us.
We got to fix that.
So, Art, that's exactly where I was going. Carol's eyes just went, uh-oh. But maybe that's a conversation for you and John LeGrand and Dr. Kapicki and Carol. Maybe you could, and Marion, right, to do some type of system analysis with our adjoining districts to see what they're doing and maybe what we can do, and get a presentation to the board.
Yes, ma'am.
How's that? Thank you. We know you've got a lot of challenges to work with, and we really appreciate it. Ms. Blackwell.
I just got to say, Art, I truly appreciate the work that you do. I know that even working with less staff, you guys have worked your tails off to try and make this be a successful school year. I know that we've had some issues. Traffic has been an issue at some of the schools, and I know that you're working on those things as well. I had mentioned this to you, and I don't know how all of this works, but if parents or folks who are truck drivers who have licenses who would be interested, and maybe they can't come on full time, but they can take on some bus shifts. I'm just trying to think outside of the box here, like if there's anything that we could do to put out there for that to help, maybe just in the meantime until we get these 44 bus drivers that we need.
Gotcha. You're exactly right. If we get more bus drivers, what happens? More kids ride buses, and therefore the traffic around the schools reduce. So if that's the number one goal, if you want to make sure that your car rider line is short, we'll staff those buses correctly, because that helps the car rider line. That helps the traffic around the schools, because I mean, with gas still at $3 something a gallon, it does make a lot of sense for parents to put their children on school buses. So we have gone around and hung some signage around our shop, and I think you've seen it, that we are looking for bus drivers. Mrs. Coble goes out and beats the bushes just about every day. We'll take anybody. I mean, we call them, and the first hit that we get on our Facebook page or whatever, we grab onto that and move on. So we're very blessed with having the good staff that we have, and they're every day looking for bus drivers. So that is it's not a Cabarrus County problem. It's not a North Carolina problem. It's a national issue.
Well, just so you know, we hear you and we appreciate you, and we definitely are going to address the pay situation for our drivers, because we know that we have the best drivers in the state.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you.
I appreciate it.
Ms. Carpenter.
And I really appreciate it. And don't put that rumor out there that I'm going to reapply for my license. But I really appreciate everything that you've done, and anything we can do on our part, we will do, because I do have, I do like to do those things. And one of the things that I was curious about, though, they do have to have the CDL, right?
Correct. They have to have a CDL, and just recently, the state of, the federal government stepped in and told North Carolina, you will start abiding by the DOT regulations as well. So now you have to have a DOT physical card. So not only do you have to have the CDL, which is a commercial driver's license class B with a P&S endorsement, you also have to have the DOT medical card. So we're offering a free physical. That's one of the things that we give through our workman's comp specialist here in Cabarrus County. We give you a free physical. So if you are able to pass the bus driving part and you're able to get the CDL, I provide you with that free physical at no cost.
You know what they're going to have to do, and they're not going to like it. They're going to have to go back like they used to do years ago when I did it.
And that's student drivers, right?
Student drivers, and we had less accidents than you ever had. That was in the good old days. But because I drove in 10th, 11th, and 12th grade, and I figured if I had to go to school, I might as well got paid for it.
Absolutely.
But we did. We drove. You had student drivers at that time, and you did have to have. I can't remember if we had to have the CDL, but we just had the regular bus driver's license.
Yep.
But it was the student drivers, and you just had to be 16, because I was 16 when I got.
I'll see if we can get your license reinstated.
Reinstated.
I think we all need to be a part of that decision. But but the other question, do you, and that's my last question, I promise, Holly, do you have a certain area that maybe you have more trouble with time-wise? When I say that, like the Cox Mill, or is there one area that you seem to have more delays? Because it seems like I get more emails maybe with one area with delays and things.
I would say wherever there's a construction detour, which is nowadays
everywhere.
It seems like that's where we get jammed up with a lot of traffic trying to come in and out. So if you just look at where the construction detours are, we're going to have delays in that area. So and then we were battling. We didn't battle the roundabout at Roberta. We were actually able to scoot around that. But anywhere you see a construction delay or heavy traffic, then we're going to be suffering some delays, because we get caught in traffic like everybody else. So school bus doesn't have a school bus lane. We sit in the traffic.
I do appreciate everything you've done, and the drivers and everything, because I know it's been real difficult. And again, whatever we can do, we do want to, and we do appreciate all the drivers and what they do.
Thank you.
Miss Adcock.
Okay, so I just ditto what everybody else says about how much we appreciate all the hard work. I know that this is not just a issue we have, but it's nationally. So thank you for continuing to look at it in different ways. I do have a question about the e-bus that we saw last year. Did they have an estimated time frame for that to be delivered to us?
The manufacturer told me at the end of this month, possibly, or the first couple weeks of October.
Awesome.
So we will definitely be showcasing the electric bus when it gets here. So I'll keep the board posted on that.
Thank you very much.
For the viewing audience, if they would like to apply, tell them where they need to go.
You can go to, if you would like to drive a school bus, you can go to our website and click on transportation, and then just follow the links. Or there's also, you can go through HR's website and go through that way, or you can call Mrs. April Coble. She's our HR representative there at the transportation facility at 704-260-5500.
Perfect. Thank you very much.
I'm sorry. I got one more question.
Okay.
Just while you're telling people how they can apply,
Okay.
can you remind us how long it takes after application for someone to be able to drive the buses?
Okay, so that everybody falls a little bit different on that scale. So we go through the vetting process, and that's what where we're at right now. Basically, when you get authorized to take the test, we'll send you the secure link. It's all done virtually nowadays, like everything else. So you take the test. Then at the end of those 3 days, I think it's a 3-day that you have to take the test virtually. Then you have to come into the transportation facility and you have to test in person with the DMV. So we just recently got a new DMV agent. So the DMV agent would be there. The person would score your test. Then depending on pass or fail, either send you back through. If you passed it, then we would turn around and schedule you a time to do some behind the wheel. Now, the behind the wheel is a 4-day class. So the whole time what you're doing is you're gathering your references, you're going through, you're doing what you need to do for Cabarrus County. So I would say anywhere, you could fast track somebody if they already had their CDL, you could get them going in less than 2 weeks. I would say anywhere between 3 and 4 if you just took the test. Okay?
Thank you, Art. We appreciate it.
At this time, Miriam Bish, our Chief of Human Resources, will give you an update.
Thank you.
Good evening. It's good to see you, Madam Chair, members of the board. So we've had a great opening, even in a tough time. We are continuing to hire, so I want to give you an update first on staffing. Right now, we are down 12 elementary teachers, and I'm going to tell you, I'm pretty proud of that. We have 21, 22 elementary schools. We are continuing to hire. We have some in process. We are still interviewing. We're not quite there yet, but we've made significant progress. We are down in middle school 5.5 positions, and that's classroom and health and PE. So I'm really proud of our middle school folks. That's sometimes a harder place to staff. We have a little more difficulty with our high schools. We are down 30 in all of our high schools combined, but 9 of those are CTE positions, which are very, very specialized and are in our academies. For the most part, when we look at things like one of them is an ESL position, one's an art position, 2 of them are Spanish positions. So our core subjects are looking good, but again, we're continuing to hire. We are using a lot of working with candidates who already have a 4-year degree and are interested in then getting a teaching license. We're working one-on-one with them to guide them so that they can go ahead and come in and begin to teach while we work with them on licensure within the parameters of our state regulations. I will also share that we have a list received today from UNC Charlotte of over 90 student teachers that will graduate in December. We have already pushed that out to our principals and said, go ahead and talk to them. Yes, I know they've been student teaching 2 weeks. That's fine with me. You can talk to them, and then we can do preliminary offers pending their graduation in December. So we're not going to wait until December. So we have 90, and it covers elementary, middle, and high school. It's really interesting. We have a very wide swath. I was thrilled to see 90 December graduates. That's not normal. Normally, mid-year graduates run somewhere around 50. So 90 mid-year graduates in student teaching from the College of Ed is fabulous. So we've pushed those out as well. Another thing I would share with you is that Ms. Herndon and I have a Teams conference call on Wednesday afternoon to discuss the salary study with the consultant and to get that started. So we are moving towards, which goes to what Mr. Whitaker was talking about. We need a comprehensive full salary study, not a partial. We need a full one. And we are talking to a consultant that does this exclusively. located here in North Carolina and has already done this for 56 school districts and recently completed 2 more in North Carolina, someone that we are very, very comfortable with, in fact, someone that Ms. Herndon has worked with previously. So the salary study will be underway within a few weeks. The benefits request for proposals will go out early November. We are in flu shot clinic season, so we want to get through that. Folks in my office are getting the flu shots up and running. The first is September 26th here at the county office, and then there will be flu shot clinics at all of our schools. So we're providing that for all of our employees, and those who are on our health plan, of course, there is no charge for it. So as soon as we get through our flu shot clinics, all of our documents are currently being updated. We're working on that, so we'll do the benefits RFP and put that out and select either the same person or a different organization for our benefits RFP. I did want to share with you, just as an aside, I recently was overseas for a couple of weeks, and before anybody says, why would you do that at the beginning of school? Because it was planned long before I decided to quit playing at home and come back to work. So this is 3 years ago this was planned and postponed. And it was very interesting as I traveled in Germany, Austria, and Switzerland to talk to folks there. Many of the same things that we're dealing with, they're dealing with in school systems. So it was really very interesting. Shortage of employees, not knowing where all these people that used to have the jobs went. It was interesting and was kind of freeing to know that we're all in this together. They are struggling to find employees just like we are in all sectors, not just in schools, but in all sectors. So it was a good conversation about what they're seeing in their educational systems in those countries, just like we are in ours. So we're continuing to work, we're continuing to hone in on it, we're continuing to track day by day and hire by hire, and we are working at them one hire at a time now to get as many positions filled. We have used some creative staffing for extended responsibilities for teachers with additional pay. We have done some extra creative staffing means to make sure that every child has a valued and qualified teacher in front of them every day. And we have succeeded in that because of our principals and the work they've done. So can I answer questions for you? I will try.
Great. Mary, did you cover substitutes, where we are on substitutes?
Thank you. Substitutes, we continue to hire, we continue to struggle. I talked to a couple of substitutes this weekend. I'm going to be real honest with you. I've spent some time with our long-term subs that are there every day. And to be honest, they gave us almost every day last year, and they're tired. And so they said, I'll do 2 to 3 this year, but I can't do 5 every week. And they're not teachers, you know. So we are continuing to struggle. I'm not going to tell you we're not. One of the things that we have not done that we're getting ready to do in October is that generally the way our instructions work to subs is that if you don't sub at least once during the year, then we purge the roles. We haven't done that since before COVID for valid reasons. People weren't subbing during COVID, and then last year maybe people weren't ready to come back, so we didn't purge again. So we will have a better grip on how many we really have after we get into early October and we purge the roles per that process. We are also working with the software folks that we use to track our hires to try to get the emails of all of our subs. It's not as easy as it sounds, but we're going to get them, and then we want to email all of them to make sure they all understand that we have gone back to using our ASOP subsystem, that we're encouraging our teachers, we're requiring them to put it in the system as quickly as they know they're going to be out so that they have as much time as possible to fill that position. So we want to make sure all of our subs know our processes and get everybody level set coming out of the pandemic. So we are continuing to work on it, but we've seen some opportunities for improvement that we think we'll have in place by about mid-October.
Okay, before I open up the floor, can you go ahead and state where they go to apply? What the
Yes,
criteria?
if people are interested in being a substitute, it only takes a high school diploma. They can certainly go to the Human Resources website, the webpage on the Cabarrus County Schools website, and go to applications, and they can apply there, and we will be happy to walk them through it. Everything is done online except your onboarding. It is done completely from your home. We can take care of that from your home.
Okay, with that, Ms. Adcock, comments or questions?
Just thank you for continuing to get our teachers in and our substitutes. I know it seems like a daunting task, but thank you for continuing to do that. I also just wanted to ask, and this is something I read that some other states were doing, is they were starting teacher residency programs and having some luck with that. What do you think about that?
We actually have a residency program in North Carolina, so it is today's version of the old lateral entry. So technically anyone with a 4-year degree, if we can match it to anything K-12 content, anything, can be on a temporary license, an emergency permit. We've got lots of ways. So really anyone with a 4-year degree who has an interest in teaching, we have ways to get them there for probably 99 out of 100 people. And we have lots of folks that we are working with right now on a residency program.
Very good. Thank you so much.
Ms. Carpenter?
Again, thank you for everything you're doing, and thank you for thinking outside that box. Because right now, everything I read, as you mentioned, it is not just here, it's everywhere.
Right.
That everybody's having the problems, and everybody's having to think outside that box. But thank you for everything you and Michael are doing, and just keep doing it. Because as I look around our districts, other ones are in worse shape than we are.
Yeah.
And so we're very fortunate to have y'all and what you're doing, and thank you.
Well, I appreciate that, and the out-of-the-box person is certainly Dr. Williams, so he thinks out of the box, and then I figure out how to make it work. So we make a pretty good team in that.
Ms. Blackwell?
I was just wondering if you had any update on the EC and hiring of the EC teachers at this point?
That still continues to be a major issue, so I can give you those numbers. Hold on just a minute. We are at this point 3, 4, 5, 6. We have 2.5 positions at elementary, 1.5 at middle, and 3 at high that we are working on. So 3, 4, 5, 6, total of 6 and 2 halves, so 7. But that's also much better. It's not where we want to be. We want it at 0, but it's sure a lot better than where we were even a month ago. And talking to districts around me, it's a lot better than where many of our districts are.
No, it's definitely better than it was the last time we talked about that. Do we have any applications that are currently in for those 6.5 positions?
I would have to look. That's
Okay.
a moving target. I mean, they come in, and we have applications, and I signed probably 10 or 12 hiring sheets today, but to be honest, I glance at them, I look at all of them, but I couldn't guarantee what they were for. So.
Okay, no worries, just wondering.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Mr. Farr?
No comments, just thanks for your continued hard work.
Thank you, Mr. Furr.
Mr. Walter?
I appreciate the update. Salary study, when was the last time we did that? Do you have any idea?
There was a partial salary study done in 2016 that I found in my office, but it was not a full salary study. The last one that was done was when I was in HR in 2011, from what I can gather. So 2011 was the last full salary study.
Non-certified or certified, or are we doing everybody?
We'll do everybody this time, yes. We're doing a full, because the landscape has changed dramatically, and as Mr. Whitaker pointed out, pay scales and everything, and then we also have to look at not just what our starting salary should be, but when we change our starting salary, please remember, if I raise it, I've got people who are several steps up that now, beginning people, are making the same as people that are been here 5 years. So we have to look at compression and everything. That's why we need a full salary study by someone who knows public education and how to do an education salary study. We will do licensed and we will do classified.
What's your budget for that?
We don't know. They haven't. We were going to talk to them Wednesday. We will know Wednesday. Generally, this is a company, an organization that's been extremely comparatively frugal in what they charge, because this is a niche work for them. But we have not gotten that far because our first meeting is Wednesday.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Ms. Sandage?
So I want to just thank you and Dr. Williams for answering my emails when I send them, regardless of how late it may be. I just truly appreciate that. We have come a long way, and I know that is thanks to you and your staff. I know we probably still got a long ways to go, but I just want you to hear me say I appreciate the work that you guys are doing. Laura must have read my mind, because my first question was EC and how we were doing there. My next question is about like TAs and like the support staff. Do we have numbers on how many we're lacking there? And I ask that because I know those are the folks who support our educators or our teachers. So if we're short there, that may be more work for our teachers as well.
We are a little short. I didn't pull those numbers. That's my fault. I apologize. TAs, we're in really pretty good shape. We have some good applicants for TAs, and I don't think we have a lot of TAs. Michael, do you know our... And Michael's looking right now. I will tell you where our bigger area is in classified, is our custodians, child nutrition, and Kids Plus. That the critical nature that Mr. Whitaker shared with you about buses exists in child nutrition, Kids Plus, and custodial as well. Those are the areas where we find ourselves struggling the most in classified. Yeah.
Okay, so I guess we'll get those numbers, is what you're saying.
I can get those numbers for you. I'll be glad to get them and send them to you tomorrow, Ms. Sandage, if you would like.
That'd be great. The other thing I was going to ask about, and this may be a Dr. Kopicki question, I'm guessing he's still on the line with us. Laura asked last meeting about visitors and volunteers, and I feel like we would get some help and some folks that would come in and support our staff if we could allow for volunteers to come into our building. So I need to know where we are with that.
I think that's probably...
Sanders. So Ms. Sanders, thanks for the question. My understanding that all of our principals are accepting volunteers and visitors to their buildings. We have a K-12 principals meeting September 20th, and we will remind our principals again, but it's my understanding that they are accepting volunteers and visitors at this point in time of the year.
If we could just repeat that louder, I could hear you, but I don't know if the general public can hear you, because that's important.
I'll repeat it for you, Dr.
Sure. Go ahead. Thank you, Dr. Bishop.
So Dr. Kopicki's comment was that we are welcoming visitors and volunteers to our schools. I was visiting a school this morning. There were visitors in the office and dropping off some things, and also visiting the school. We do welcome visitors and volunteers in our buildings at this time. We have a principals meeting next Tuesday on the 20th, and we will remind principals and reiterate to them. But our understanding is that principals are welcoming folks back in the building at this time. As I said, I've been in a couple of schools just in the last week, and there were visitors in the building at that time.
Thank you. That's all I have.
Thank you.
Sure. Ms. Blackwell has one more.
Just wanted to ask another question, and this is a concern that I've had from parents as well, about book bags and lockers. I know that lockers were kind of not allowed during the situation with COVID, but we're moving past that. We're getting visitors back into the schools. Are we going to allow these children to start using their lockers again? Because I have had multiple complaints from parents regarding the weight of some of these book bags that these kids are having to carry, 20 pounds and around that weight.
So that's an excellent question. It's not an HR question, but
Well, since you're doing double duty right now,
yeah,
you're Dr. Kopicki.
I know my lane, but I also know how to feed people questions. So again, I think that's a question probably for particularly our middle and high school assistant superintendents and our chief academic officer, and I'm going to hand that off to them for them to have a conversation to decide when and if and when we return to the use of lockers in middle and high school. So I think that probably Ms. Blessington, Mr. Palmer, and Sarah Reeves, that would be, I think that's an excellent question. It's just not my decision to make.
Agreed. I understand. Thank you.
And they're next up anyway, so
Yeah.
no better entrance.
There you go. So, having said that, I'm going to turn the podium over to Sarah Reeves, Chief Academic Officer.
Good evening, Madam Chair, members of the board. Thank you so much for allowing me to present today. To follow up that question, I think that is a great discussion point for us to have with our middle school and high school principals next Tuesday, and certainly can push communication out on whatever is discussed at that time. So I am here today just to share with you all the resources that are available from a core curriculum perspective, K-12 on our website. It has come to my attention that many of our families might not know that this exists, and so we worked really strategically to make sure that it was present, available, on our website in an easy-to-use format, but certainly we are still open to feedback. So if there are other avenues or that we can be able to share this information. The other thing that I would say is this is in addition to the individual teacher Canvas pages. So you're not going to see necessarily a day-by-day glance of what this looks like, because that would be on the teacher Canvas page, but this will show you at a glance what we are doing in terms of teaching the state standards, the curriculum resources that we are using, and how we are supporting from a district level perspective. So if you'll bear with me, I think the easiest way to do this is to show you visually on our website how you can access these resources. And so when you're up at the top of our landing page, you simply go to the department's website, scroll down to the curriculum and instruction department, and then we actually, to make it very easy, we put it as the top link in the blue bar on the far left-hand side. So you just click that, and this will take you right to our Parent Canvas course. And the important thing to note is obviously there is a lot of content here. So it's going to be broken down by levels so that families can access these resources. So let's just say I have an elementary school student really interested in learning a little bit more because I have a little one at home, and when I ask, what did you learn today, it isn't always super descriptive, right? So what does that look like? You can click on the curriculum button. Sorry, it's moving a little bit slow today. Say I have a kindergartner. And then you're going to have the curriculum at a glance. But then it's also going to be broken down into each of the content areas. So you can actually see, if you really wanted to take, obviously this is the 30,000 foot view, right, of what a student would see in a year, depending on quarter. But then if you were really curious, first quarter routines, habits, and early learning behaviors, and then how can I support my child at home? And then we actually have hyperlinks to the different resources and standards that are assessed there. From a middle or high school perspective, you're not going to necessarily see it broken down in that way, but it is going to be broken down by courses. So you can actually click on the curriculum resource, and then you're going to see our courses there in which you can navigate all of the resources that are currently available. I will also say to you, this is a living, breathing document, so it is uploaded consistently, and the intent in this is that as we're continuing to build out resources, and as many of you may know, we're in the process of revising standards constantly in the state of North Carolina. So we just finished social studies, so obviously all of those resources are going up, and now we're embarking on the science standards revision. So as those change and morph, these will be updated, which is why you're seeing more of a Canvas course than necessarily a textbook, so to speak, in that format.
Are you ready?
Yes,
Okay.
ma'am.
I'll open the floor, Ms. Sandage, and begin with you.
So I'm over here smiling because this presentation came from a suggestion from the Schools and Community Engagement Committee, and this is a good example of how transparency works and how working together works. So you just took my whole explanation doing board committee reports, so thank you.
Absolutely.
I appreciate this, and I hope that parent or those parents are looking at this. And if folks have questions specific to this, where do they go?
So I think it would depend on the specific question. So if it has to do with our district curriculum resources, certainly we are happy to answer it. I am happy to answer it, and you are welcome to email me. If it is specific to a lesson that a teacher is teaching, I think you would start with the teacher and then potentially the administration if you had a question regarding an individual lesson.
Thank you so much for this presentation and taking the time to listen.
Absolutely.
Thank
My pleasure.
Mr. Walter.
Good stuff. Thanks for showing the parents how to access that. Because you're right there. We get a lot of people who have questions, and it's all right there, and we don't even know it. So thanks.
And I will tell you, the parent curriculum resource was a few tabs down, and so I think just having it easily to navigate, like, that's very important to us. And so any feedback that our families have on how to make this more user-friendly, we certainly want to hear that.
Mr. Furr.
I got nothing but thanks for your presentation.
Absolutely. Ms. Blackwell.
So I had a concern that was brought to my attention regarding some curriculum within certain schools. Are specific lesson plans and the units and all of that stuff, are those going to be listed on here as well for parents to have access to? There's the subject matter that's going to be discussed.
Yeah, that's a great question.
Some of those curriculum.
So that was what we would call a stage 3 resource, and it depends on the specific content area and how far out that is going to be built out. So for example, in elementary right now, if you wanted to know even from a text set that was selected, we have the read alouds listed here. That is being built out in middle school and high school at this point in time.
Okay.
If that is a middle school or high school specific question, then that would be coming from the teacher Canvas page or teacher syllabus, and that in which the teachers are actually using, and I think it's probably helpful for me to show you, they are using our curriculum maps and vetting the text selection that they are using in their lessons through their professional learning communities. And so that is specifically following policy it is written now, but it is not as detailed as this is the exact lesson per day. That would not be coming from the district website at this point in time.
But that is something that we could.
We're in the works of doing
Okay.
it. Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
So we really piloted this with elementary first, just specifically in kindergarten through 5th grade, and that's the feedback that we've even received from the teachers. And so we've started the process right now of late last year we actually surveyed all of the teachers on what are specifically in ELA. What are the titles that you are utilizing? How do you use it to teach? What is the difference in 6th grade versus 7th grade? The other thing is many of our teachers have said candidly, we want to know what are at the core level resources we can utilize so that we're not reading the same book repetitiously. So that is in the process of being completed as we speak.
Okay. If we have specific questions regarding certain things that are in the curriculum, do you want us to address those here, or do you want us to message you
I think
directly?
if we could talk individually about certain circumstances, because I imagine that it depends on the circumstance, and so we can certainly have conversations about that, and then we can figure out whether or not that's school level we can troubleshoot, or at the district level we need to troubleshoot that.
Okay. All right.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Ms. Carpenter.
Thank you so much for that. And were y'all responsible for this, or where did this come from? It's the Welcome Back Fall 22, the official information guide. Was that, who did this?
Independent Tribute.
They did that? Well, this is great. And the reason I say that, it's got all kinds of great information in it. It has all the school addresses. It has our calendars for all our schools. It also has the football schedules. Anyway, I picked one of these up. So if you've got that available, I'm putting a plug in. I saw this on our out in our lobby, and this is wonderful. So if you've got a chance, people pick these up. These are wonderful. But it has all our information for all the schools. But the football schedule was really great. But I thought maybe it came from us. So I'm giving the Independent Tribune a great plug. But this was, it did have all our information. It talks about transportation and school safety and the lunch program. And it's got some really great information in it. But I thought maybe it came from y'all. That's why I was asking. But and also about safety, but everything. But it just really had some great information. So, but it says welcome back, but it says the official information guide. So Parents, if you've got a chance to get this, I'm putting a plug in because it's just got
I'm
some
sure
great
they'll
information.
appreciate that.
Huh?
I'm sure they'll appreciate it.
They'll appreciate that.
All right, Ms. Adcock.
I don't really have anything else to add other than thank you for this and for the committee that Ms. Sandage was leading that came up with this idea. I think it's fantastic, and it does just continue to broaden our sense of transparency to our families and our parents.
Okay, thank you very
Wonderful,
much. We
thank you.
appreciate the presentations. Dr. Probst, are you continuing on, or are you good, Sarah? You good? Okay. Dr. Probst, anything else? Oh, great. Okay. Thank you. And 5.03, Mr. White, anything on the attorney comments?
We do not have anything to present to the board tonight.
Thank you. We will move on to 6.01, committee reports by board members, and I will begin with Ms. Sandage.
So the Schools and Community Engagement Committee met on 8/23 from 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. I was going to highlight what Ms. Reeves so eloquently presented, but that's about it. We will meet in November. We have yet to decide a day in November. I just want to thank the committee members as well.
Great. Mr. Walter.
I don't have anything.
Mr. Furr,
Nothing.
would you like to announce the turf dedication for next Friday night?
I guess we're gonna dedicate the field at Concord High this Friday night.
16th.
Yeah, what time we gotta be there?
6 o'clock.
6 o'clock, so.
Oh, well, we have to be there at 5:45.
And the rest of you guys wear your spider stuff.
We get that. Thank you. Ms. Blackwell?
So I did want to mention that we do have our next Literature and Supplemental Material Committee. It is scheduled for September the 20th, which is a Tuesday evening at 6 o'clock. We are going to actually be having that here this time. And I do that just because of I know that the schools have a lot of things going on right now, and this didn't get scheduled until a little later than I had wanted to do that, so I didn't want to give that short notice to the principals to have to arrange for us to come to the library. Our agenda will be finalized, and I will have that sent out to my committee members here within the next couple of days. Wanted to make sure that we had our discussions here tonight first before I sent the agenda out for our committee. And I just want to, reiterate what I had said earlier, which is our goal on this committee is to do things the right way, not the fast way. And so I just want to let my committee members know how much I appreciate their engagement. We do have a couple of new committee members that will be coming on with us, so I think that's going to put our committee total at about 25. So we do have a very robust and diverse committee. So if you are available on September the 20th and would like to come out to our meeting, you cannot speak at the meeting, but we are welcoming anyone from the public who would like to join and come to the meeting as well.
Thank you. Ms. Carpenter?
Yes, thank you. First of all, I would like to say that we finished our 9 school tools up, and everyone that got some of them, I can tell you the schools were so excited about that. I think everybody I delivered to, they were just ecstatic with what they got. The Concord Afton Sunset Rotary was again the sponsor of the 9 school tool supply collection for the 5th year. All items donated were for the benefit of Cabarrus County Schools and Kannapolis Schools. The Rotary Club partnered with Staples at Carolina Mall and were the benefit of their donated box sales. And this is what a donated box sells. And this box contains 19 school favors, and it's a dry eraser marker, 1 Sharpie permanent marker, 2 Sharpie highlights, 2 Papermate pens, 8 pencil wood case pencils, 2 erasers, ink let's see, Elmer glue stick and a regular box of glue. So they're just really super little boxes. Staples started selling these boxes in April, and the Rotary Club collected and stored the donations until the August distribution to the school. Each box contained 19 supply items. And over 1,700 of these donated boxes were donated by our generous community and by Staples through a coupon for a free box. We are very appreciative of Staples' generosity. In addition, several businesses, churches hosted collection boxes and barrels, provided additional donations to CCS and KCS students and staff. Many of the businesses have been collection sites for all 5 years of the Rotary Club's work. We also had direct donations from Harris Teeter and Target, as well as generous monetary donations from individuals. The Rotary Club's previous purchased 14 acrylic supply holders for all schools serving high school age students. CCS facilities mounted these supply holders in early 2021 in the guidance offices areas at each school. A separate box of supplies were provided for refilling these supply holders at these schools. Rotarians and other community volunteers delivered boxes of supplies to 45 CCS locations and to A.L. Brown High School and Kannapolis City School offices. We appreciate the support of board members Ms. Carpenter, Mr. Walters, and for the fifth year, and we welcome Ms. Sandridge join the efforts this year by delivering supplies to school. In the first 4 years of our collection, the totals were 2018, 20,333 items, 2019, 30,180 items, 2020, 25,015 items, 2021, 32,832 items, and in 2022, with the support of Staples, our community, we collected and donated, drum roll please, 51,901 school supplies. So thank you, community, and thank you, everyone. And thank you, Ms. Chairman.
That was awesome. That is a great report, and you're right. That actually doubled it from the initial year.
It was wonderful.
That's awesome. That is very, very good. All right, Ms. Adcock, anything on your end? And I know you do. Okay.
Yes, so I'm going to come down to the podium and ask our new BOE student interns to come and talk about themselves, tell them why they wanted to be part of this program. So.
And Ms. Adcock, just while they're coming, do you want to just give just a quick synopsis of what a BOE intern actually is for the general public and viewing audience?
Sure. So this is the 3rd year that we've actually had the program, and these students go online. They fill out an application, go through a process that's pretty rigorous. They have to have 2 teacher references and then a principal reference, and then we go through the process of selecting the board intern applicants, and then they start the process. So we have 3 students that are starting the first semester, and then 2 students that are starting the second semester. Some of the program requirements are that they go to the transportation center, they take tours, technology center is a tour. They also do service projects, and they are just involved in a high level of what our school system does for our community and for our students.
Very good.
So hi, my name is Kendall Lewis. I'm a junior at Hickory Ridge High School. I enjoy writing and reading, and my favorite subject is math. And I wanted to become an intern because I'm interested in how the leadership works within this community and kind of seeing behind the scenes work. I'm also a big advocate for mental health, so I just want to make sure that those types of concerns are heard. So yeah.
Hi, my name is Shan He. I also go by Mary. I'm a senior in Northwest High School, Cabarrus High School. So I actually applied to the program because I realized last year's the student interns, they were doing great things to our community with their service projects. And that is something I really want to get involved with and hopefully benefit our community. And just a few meetings we already have, I'm learning a lot about our school system, how everything focused together to group what we have for our students. And I have a little suggestions for the parent resources, since we have a lot of students that come from families with second languages, that English is not their first language. If there's other language options, that would be great. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Marley Parikh, and I'm a senior at Concord High School. Go Spiders! And I decided to be a board intern this year is because very interested in how our government works, and the way I could get involved was being a student intern at the Cabarrus County School Board. So I'm interested in how you guys run and work everything to make sure that we stay in school and everything is working safely and fine. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Allie Bogar, and I'm a senior at Hickory Ridge, and I decided to be a student board intern because I'm really interested in how local government works. I've always been interested in it, and just having this opportunity, I'm so grateful. So yeah.
Thank you. What an engaged group, and they're already giving recommendations. Welcome, and we look forward to working with you this year. Ms. Adcock, did you have anything else, or was that it? Okay, I'll move on while you're returning. Okay, board members, we will continue to 7.01, which is your agenda item is described as the Mondo Track Surface at J.M. Robinson High School. And this is an opportunity similar to the one that partnership with the CVB on the West Cabarrus turf tracks. And Donna Carpenter actually presented to her board the idea, and they are in conversation about that and just what that looks like and the benefits and what the details will be, and that will come back to us. I just wanted to kind of introduce it to you so you're prepared. But I'll just read a little bit about a Mondo track because I'm not sure how many even know what that is. Mr. Furr, you've been our athletic liaison, you probably know a little bit more. But it says a Mondo track and field services offer uniform dynamic response and complete control over stride, rhythm, and balance for every athlete, professionals, and amateurs alike. The advantages of Mondo's prefabricated track surfaces include optimal performance for athletes regardless of climate and environmental conditions. I'm going to just forward this on, and actually, Phil Furr, are you here? Do you have any information regarding that? Would you like to have any additional description of that? You don't have to. I'm not putting you on the spot. Would you like to come to the podium? If you're familiar with it and would like to say something, if you don't, it's okay. It's all good.
Depends how much you want to know.
Okay, I'll pass on that then. How's that? Right. So just knowing that the CVB's board of directors is actually having that conversation, they will detail that out of what their expectations are, what they can do, and then that will come back to this board. Just want to put it out there to you. Will you key up, please, Ms. Carpenter?
I'm just curious, when they bring it back, are they going to tell us how many lanes? Because, that depends on how big if it can be a regional track meet or whatever. That's kind of information I'd be interested in.
I have a little bit of that. It says most Mondo surfaces are said to be a 10-year solution, and then it talks about the economic impact for to help the school. It's a very fast. You can run very fast on a hard carpet surface, which is the positives. The negatives, not good to train on. There's a couple of things here, so that may not answer all your questions. There's some similar tracks at Winston-Salem, Lenore-Ryan, NC-A&T, but yes, it is basically for competitions. That's the whole point. Cabarrus County does not have access to that, and it's very, very much requested. So that's why the conversation.
I know that one of the tracks, one of the areas had gotten 9 lanes or 8, and that's why I was curious how many lanes. So
Let's
if
let
we
Mr.
could-
Furr speak. I think he may have a
Okay.
little bit more information.
Oh, I was just gonna say, it's a big time track where you can have like national and state meets and bring, they can bring revenue to the county. Something that this county doesn't have, so.
And that's why they're involved. So just like it was for the turf fields at West Cabarrus and, some of the others. Mr. Walter?
Yeah, they're doing this, are they asking for us to be financially
So those details
involved in
have
this,
not-
or is this just county? Or is
Right,
this
so
just-
we do not have those. They are actually just presenting it to their board. They will, have that discussion and like I said, what their budget consists of and, what they're gonna come back to us with those types of details. Ms. Sandage?
Can we just clarify for the viewing audience what CVB stands for?
Yes, I'm sorry, it's the Cabarrus Visitors Bureau. Okay, all right, thank you for that. Okay, with that being said, just know that there'll be additional information to come back to us after their board has their final meeting regarding that. We will move to 8.01, which are items considered for the consent or action agenda. We will begin with policies for approval on second read. We'll have Mrs. Burns to the podium, and I'm going to do this just like we normally do. Mrs. Burns, any comments or questions on policy 6220, which is operation of school nutrition services, 3200, selection of instructional materials, 3210, parental inspection and objection to instructional materials?
No, I've not had any questions.
Ms. Blackwell, I will let you take that from there.
Yes, ma'am. So at this time, I would like to recommend to the board that we do table the policy 3200 and policy 3210 until after the Literature and Supplemental Material Committee meet again in order to vet these a little better and to go over the process again. So I would need to...
Let me open it up for discussion in case
Okay.
there's anything on policy 6220, and I would say also to include that to vet the 10 questions that
Yes.
were requested
Yes.
by the group. That's okay. Good.
Yes.
So I will begin with Ms. Adcock. Any comments or questions on any of these?
I don't have any comments or questions.
Ms. Carpenter, comments or questions? Mr.
Well,
Furr.
I'll second it.
Okay, gotcha. Mr. Furr.
No.
Mr. Walter.
As far as tabling it, I'm okay with that.
Perfect. Ms. Sandage.
I'm sorry, but can you just clarify what the source is? I told you I'm gonna ask you that every time. When we do a district request PLS update, what does that mean?
So 6220 has recommended changes from our district staff, and there are also some recommendations from the Policies to Lead the Schools update service that we subscribe to.
Okay, and my next question is, there was some discussion about there not being a process in place for reviewing supplemental material, and I just want to make sure that I understand this correctly. In the interim to us reviewing this policy again, what happens in situations like what we discussed earlier? I just want to make sure that that is crystal clear, and I hope that made sense.
So I'm going to take that. So because the Literature and Supplemental Materials Committee will meet prior, which is September the 20th, that you will take that up as a charge because you're here and the board absolutely does want you to take that up. They will have the discussion, and then this will go back to the Policy Committee. So-
Correct. And the Policy Committee will next meet in October.
Perfect, and
So-
that's great timing.
Okay.
Okay, and then all that information will be vetted. The policy committee will do a review, and then of course it'll come back to us. Do you know when the policy committee is meeting in October?
It's the third Thursday in October, so I'd have to...
So that may not be until the November meeting to be presented
Right,
back to
that
the
would be correct,
Board of
yes.
Education.
Yeah.
Okay, that's
Yeah.
fine.
Can I ask a question, because I know there may be people wanting to know this also. The board did a temporary or emergency approval of those two policies last month. So can someone explain where we are now with
Mr.
that?
White, would you like to address
That's
that?
actually what I was trying to figure out.
Well, Mr. Vogel is actually handling more of the policy aspects, but they'd stay in effect, I mean, until this board changes them.
Yeah, my view on that is that it's a gray area under the board policy. I think it would be permissible if the revisions stayed into effect on a temporary basis pending the board's taking up the policy revisions on a second read. I think if the board were to continuously table it, then you're on weaker and weaker grounds. But for a month-long tabling to let the literature and curriculum committee take a look at it and then bring it back to the policy committee to bring it back here for a second read, I think that's arguably permissible.
Okay, great. So what I'm hearing, unless anyone has any other further comments, policy 6220 is going to be placed on the consent agenda for approval, and policies 3200 and 3210 will be referred back to the literature committee, which will ultimately be referred back to the policy committee. Is all good there, and do we all understand how that's going to take place? Okay, very good. Moving on. We're going to keep Ms. Burns for 8.02, the 2023-2024 academic calendars.
Good evening. Thank you for allowing me to present some calendar options for you for the 23-24 school year. This will look a little different tonight. We are going to look at some options: the early college calendar, the Wolf Meadow year-round calendar, and then we're going to have a discussion on an early start calendar and the traditional calendar for K-12. So looking at the early college calendar, there are no big changes from last year. So the students would start August 9th and they finish semester 1 December 15th. They have 85 days in semester 1. Semester 2 has 85 in semester 1. Semester 2 has 89 days. The last day of school is May 17th. That gives them a total student days of 174, and total hours of instruction is 1,122.3. The requirement from North Carolina is 1,025, so they have plenty of days, plenty of hours, and this is in line with the Cabarrus Community College calendar so that their students can attend classes. Are there any questions on this, or do you want me to just go through?
I would just go through all of them, and
All right.
Is that good for everyone? Okay.
The year-round calendar, so this is our Wolf Meadow Elementary calendar, and this school students will start July 18th. Semester 1 ends December 15th. There are 86 days in their first semester. Semester 2 ends June 5th. There are 88 days. They also will have 174 days. The elementary school day is a little bit shorter than high school, so you're going to see they have 1,062 hours, still plenty of hours and days in the school year. And there are no major changes to this calendar from the last few previous years. Okay, so we're going to talk a little bit about the calendar flexibility that you all approved with your legislative agenda, your Schools Act. You had asked our calendar committee to come up with a calendar that would meet your flexibility that you all had asked us to do, so I want to share that with you. And then I will also compare it with the traditional calendar, and you all can decide what you want to do with these. Okay, so the early start calendar would begin on a Wednesday, August 9th. No one likes to start school on a full week, so that was kind of a fun thing to add in there. Students start the 9th. Semester 1 has 85 days. Semester 1 would end on December 16th before winter break. Semester 1 would have 85 days. Semester 2 would end on May 23rd before Memorial Day with 91 days. Total student days were 175, giving approximately 5 days above our 1,025 required. And this is, so this is our early start calendar option that you all can look at. The traditional calendar would start August 28th, and semester 1 would end January 19th with 85 days. Semester 2 would end June 6th with 88 days. Total student days 173. We have 3 early release PD days in here, actually in all of the calendars. So there are more, we have plenty of days and plenty of hours in this calendar, and this would be your traditional calendar, really no major changes from this year. Okay, so how does all this compare? So the traditional start, August 28th, I'm just going to do the first 2. Early start would be the 9th. Semester 1, you can see where you would end before winter break or 2 weeks after students return. There are three more days in the early start calendar than there are in the traditional calendar. The early colleges, you will see that the early college is basically the same, almost the same calendar as the early start. And there were many families that were excited about this because they have students at early college and students in the middle school or elementary school, and they were very excited that they would have the same spring break, a lot of them. So when you think about it, three of your children are off one week and then the other one's off the other week, and there's no spring break unless you leave one home to go to school, and that's just not fair. All right, so then the Wolf Meadow is actually fairly similar, but really it's the early start and the early colleges would have very, very similar calendars, and the traditional calendar would be basically what we've been doing. So that is the calendars that you all can consider, and let me know if you have any questions.
So this has been a very contentious discussion everywhere within the districts, but we know that that also gets exams before they are released for Christmas with the early start as well. So the alignment with the early colleges, the consistency, and the exams prior to Christmas break.
Correct.
Okay. Hearing that, I'll open up the floor for discussion, and I'll begin with Ms. Adcock.
I don't have any questions or comments about it. I'm just excited about the calendar to get the kids started early.
Ms. Carpenter?
Okay, that was getting the exams in before the break. You get to line up with the early colleges. Now, the other question, that did not say when you would do the graduations. Is that correct? Or did we have...
That is correct, because until we have an approved calendar, they won't be able to schedule graduations.
So we
like
don't
that's
have,
just dependent on.
We just say we end on the 29th of May, so we don't have graduation dates in there. So it would have to be after the 29th that we put those graduation dates in there. Is that correct?
Well, no. The last day of school is the 23rd, is that what I said? Yeah. The 23rd.
Okay.
So there is the weekend of Memorial Day, and then the following weekend, and the people that plan those things can figure that out.
Okay. All right. I can figure it out. Okay. All right.
I can only do one thing at a time.
All right. Is that good? Ms. Blackwell?
So I just want to tell you, I appreciate you doing all of this. It's good to see it kind of laid out like this. I know that all of us are very excited about having these kids finish up the first semester before Christmas break and not having to worry about those final exams after Christmas. So I just appreciate you putting all of this together. I'm also, just like Denise, I'm excited about it as well, for us to be able to hopefully make this happen for our kids in this community. It's the right thing to do. So thank you.
I do want to thank the calendar committee. They are, I could call a meeting and almost everyone is there. And I did want to say, we have, our calendar committee has around 25 people. We have representatives from our cabinet is there. We have principals from every level, including non-traditional schools. We have teachers from every level, assistant TAs, and we have parents on this committee. So it was well discussed, and then we also took it to our stakeholders. We ran it through the superintendent and cabinet and principals, all of the superintendent's advisory councils, and there was, so I just want the public to know that this has been through a lot of feedback.
A very vetted process.
Yes,
right?
thank you.
Mr. Furr?
No, just thanks to you and the calendar committee, and hopefully we can get this done before I'm gone from here, because we've been trying to do it since 2008, so I'd like to see that before I retire.
Mr. Walter?
Yeah, I also want to thank the calendar committee for the work on this. The key here is what's best for kids, and that's what the focus of everyone that I saw on there was what's best for kids, and having an earlier start is best for kids. I mean, there is some pain in this thing. You do have a shorter summer. It does mess with the traditional spring break. It's no longer over Easter week, is that right?
Correct. Actually, the board had voted, was it last spring maybe, or last fall, to make that first week in March spring break every year for the traditional calendar also.
Okay,
But
so
you're correct.
Either way, there's a non-traditional spring
Yes.
break
Yeah.
coming, and there's more student days or hours in this calendar, which really makes it better for students, in my opinion. Again, the question goes back, are we legally allowed to do it? And then there are some other districts that have decided to go ahead and do that. For next week when we vote on this, I would like to see what those other districts were.
I do know
We can get
Gaston
that.
County is started early this year. And Dr. Withers had mentioned that the Southwest region, many of those districts are also looking at the same thing that we're looking at.
Which is good if it's legal to do it, even if it's not where they're pushing the envelope there. And I'd be willing to do that too. I just want to hear our public input from next week. Thanks.
Ms. Sandage?
Can I ask you what your direct title is? Like, what do you do here at the district? Because I
My
swear
name's
you be
Jack.
everywhere.
No, just kidding. No, I'm the Director of Administrative Services.
Well, thank you for all that you do. I truly do see you everywhere, even at the door letting us in during board meetings. I didn't mean anything by that, but I just thank you. Just wanted everybody to know that. The one question I had is we keep getting, I keep getting questions about when does this take place? Don't let us know at the last minute, all of that good stuff. So can we talk about where we are in the process of this being signed, sealed, delivered?
We are going to vote on that. This is it right now.
I got you. So we've already gotten approval from...
No, we have not.
And that's what I want us to clarify, because we are still getting, I am still getting questions about that. And I think if we can make this as clear as possible, like, what are we waiting on? Right? And then when we get that, when do we implement I hope, you got me? Okay, good.
I got you. So I'm the chair of the chairs of our district. So this has been a very vetted conversation among the districts, and that's why some of them chose to go ahead and go with the early start this year. It has to be approved by legislation. And yes, it is going to be another conversation at that level, but the majority of those districts have decided to move forward, go ahead and implement the county, and let's see where the fallout is. And that's probably exactly what will take place. But at the end of the day, supposedly, so far, the ones that have started, when we're trying to address learning loss and, kids in seats for a longer period of times and shorter where they're not having to do remediation, there's a lot of stuff there. So yeah, there'll be a lot of conversations, but this board needs to make this decision and just see how it goes. Okay?
Oh, I want to make sure I understand that. So, we haven't gotten approval, but we're going to discuss whether or not we're going to go ahead and go with it anyway. Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah. Right. Jay, would you like to discuss that? We did a legislative request back in April. So.
I just think if we can clarify what we're doing, that would be really, really good, because we're going to all get emails at some point
I'm
about
on my way out, so I'm going to make sure y'all are in all kinds of trouble before I leave.
It's better to ask for forgiveness.
Two things, Mrs. Sandage, is that I believe it was in April of this year, y'all passed a resolution asking for the General Assembly to amend the calendar law as it relates to the 2023-2024 school year to allow y'all to start school no later than August the 9th. So that's number one. Number two is that under the statutes, and I can bore you with the exact statute and all that, you do have the authority to have a start date and an end date. And then what happens is, if you would like for your start date and end date to be something different than August
28th.
Monday closest to August the 26th, then you have to have an exception, and that Dr. Kapicki and myself, we've been working on the statutory exceptions so that y'all don't get in trouble for that. Okay, so all of those bases are being covered, so you'll be good to go.
Not yet.
I will make certain that does not happen.
Okay.
And also, I'm sorry, one other thing is, this is to be absolutely abundantly clear. If the board votes on this, this is a board's decision. This is not coming from an administration. This is not coming from Dr. Kapicki. This is what the board has decided, and they have followed at the direction of this board to come up with this. And that still does not change my prior statement. You are not going to get in trouble.
I'm gonna say I'm just a bit lost, but okay, I don't understand what we're doing as it relates. Like, are we breaking some law somewhere?
No, ma'am.
Oh, okay.
No, ma'am. You're not breaking any law. What you're doing is you're putting the state superintendent of the public instruction and the state board of education on notice. Okay? You're putting them on notice that we are going to, and if the board votes on it, that the board was going to start school next year on August the 9th, except for Wolf Meadow, which is a year-round school.
I'm sorry, I got so many questions. Okay, so when we do that, the state or General Assembly has the option to come and say and do something.
Not the General Assembly. It would be the Superintendent of Public Instruction, and the State Board of Education can say whatever they want to say to y'all, but there's nothing in the statutes that that get you in trouble. At best, it seems like it would be a slap on the hand, but it's not even that. And to Mr. Walter's point, I believe that not only has Gaston addressed this, Stanley County has addressed this, and Rowan, so it is several school districts.
In the past, we were told we would be withholding, potentially risking our superintendent's salary. Is that not the case anymore?
That's why it's going to be a Board of Education. And to say that has not been vetted yet completely. That's a lot of stuff out there that's really not been vetted yet. But that's why it's going to come from the Board of Education, and it's approved by us. Okay? All right, so with that being said, are we good for me to place that on the action agenda for next week?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, there you go.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Burns. Okay, Dr. Kapicki, are you still with us?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Do you have anything to add to that, or are you good?
I understand the protocol. I understand what your process is going to be. I'm fine.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, he's satisfied. All right, thank you. We will move to 8.03, which is the RFP for the district realignment. Dr. Kapicki, do you want to address that, or Dr. Probst?
I can address it. What I'm asking the board for permission is to begin the process to develop an RFP to advertise for a district realignment so that we can align our capacity. We have the capacity for our population currently, but we are not aligned appropriately across the district. And because we have done so many different realignments over many years, we're just all out of sync. And it's best if we just go right now, put an RFP out there, get the firms to bid on the RFP, have them come back and present to the board, and then have the board choose a firm to do a district-wide realignment, so that we can get our capacity under control. When I say that, there's somewhere between 6,000 plus seats that can address some of the situations to our overcrowding in some of our high schools, middle schools, and elementary schools. Instead of just shifting schools back and forth, it would be best for kids, for parents, and for our community if we just realign the entire district one full time. And the growth of the district is also something that we need some professional consultants to take a look at and give us some guidance. So I'm asking for the board's permission to develop the RFP and put it out for advertisement.
Okay, great. So I will open the floor for discussion. I'll begin with Ms. Adcock.
What is the time frame, Dr. Kopicki, that once you get this RFP out, what is your time frame or goal for when you want this realignment to start?
I could have the RFP put together by next week and have that together for the to put out. I would imagine about 30 days to let it be out there in the public, see what the response is, bring it back to the board, and have the board entertain presentations in November. And once selected, I anticipate that it would probably take a good full year to year and a half to align a new district alignment with the opening of the R. Brown McAllister Elementary School, which is 24-25. So it would be a very thoughtful process. It's not going to be a quick process. It's going to be a thoughtful process so that we get it right, so that we can engage the community, we can engage the board, we can have a lot of discussion, we can go over a lot of different presentations, a lot of different possibilities, so that we get it right and it's done the right way.
Thank you.
Ms. Carpenter?
And you're saying how we're looking all over the United States for somebody to do this, or is this just locally, or where are we putting this RFP out to?
I think you open it up for anyone to bid on it, but obviously we would take all those proposals back to our own internal committee and bring the best three to the board to decide. And obviously, I think you always take a hard look at anybody locally that would express an interest.
And how long would we leave this RFP out for?
I believe it's a 30-day window. I would have to go back and check on that, but I believe it's 30 days.
Okay. That's all the questions I have.
Okay. Ms. Blackwell?
I don't have any questions about the RFP. I'm good with putting that out there, so.
Mr. Furr?
I don't have any questions. I just like to thank you for having the courage to step out and do this. I brought this up in 2010, and the board members at the time told me I was absolutely out of my mind. But we have moved kids way too many times by just putting Band-Aids on it, and it's time that we redistrict the entire county and get it right for a period of time. So thank you very much.
Mr. Walter?
Yeah, I'm not sure we'll ever get it right. I don't know how we're growing too fast. Maybe closer. What is your budget for this?
What was your question? I'm
What
sorry.
is the budget for this?
Yes, the budget, there has been an allocation budgeted. I would have to check with Mrs. Herndon, but I do know that we budgeted monies this year for this particular item. I'd have to talk with her to get the exact number, but I know we have a budget item for a realignment.
All right, I'd like to know what that number is.
I can get that for you tomorrow morning. I'll send it to you and the whole board.
Yeah, in the past, we had done some of this stuff in-house. I think did we hire a demographer? Have we hired that person, or is that position still open?
So we have that position is still open. We're going to begin those interviews in the next week. But you do not have the capability to, in my professional opinion, you have one person or the people internally to do this and get it right. I think that's been probably part of the problem. That's only one small part of the problem, but I think that you really want to go out and get some professional consultation and work with our people, our community, and our board in making final decisions.
Yeah, I think I can understand that part too, and I also understand the part of having this outside firm that's not invested in our community making recommendations and decisions for us, which didn't go over real well last time. So just want to be cognizant of that. That's all I had.
Ms. Sandage.
I appreciate the input. Thank you, Mr. Walter.
So I appreciate you, Dr. Kapicki, thinking outside of the box in ways that we can make sure that we are doing what's best for all of our kiddos and folks in our district. My concern is when we talk about redistricting in any capacity, that brings about a whole host of concerns for parents and, you know, where's my kid going to go? What does this mean for my family? And I think we just need to be very transparent with what this process looks like, even to the point of maybe allowing for questions to be asked, and I'm not sure why I'm pupping in here in the microphone, but to allow for there to be a place on the website to ask questions specific to what this process looks like. We may not be there just yet, but I just want us to be thinking long term. It seems like we're already doing that, but just want to put that out there.
Thank you.
Yes, so Mr. Sandage, you're exactly correct on that. What you normally do is you create a website within your website and you put all that information on there. So we would definitely be very transparent about it. And Mr. Walter, I believe the number that we have budgeted is $350,000 for this particular item.
Just one more thing. There was a lot of things that I feel like we learned from the last redistricting that I think we could take from and implement to this process going forward, and even before, you know, now that we're thinking about it, where do we put those places? Like, again, what I'm saying about allowing for questions before we even decide upon if this is going to be the right thing to do. I just think while we have the capability, we need to put as much information out there before we do anything, and I just want to make sure my concern is duly noted.
Understood. Thank you, Ms. Sandage.
So, Dr. Kapicki, for the business meeting, if you will, with that, you know, with those questions, get that information, and I guess we'll need a not to exceed number regarding the amount of money. So I guess we just need to be prepared for that for the business meeting. Is that good?
Yes, ma'am.
All right, thank you. Moving on to 8.04, sole source vendor. We'll have Mr. Chuck Taylor to the podium. Good evening.
Good evening, board members. So this evening I'd like to ask for your consideration and authorization to utilize Hussey Seating and their distributor, Seating Safety Solutions, as well as Train HVAC Controls as a sole source. They meet all three of the requirements under your board policy as well as the state statute. I've worked in consultation and as a team with Ms. Herndon. We have the documentation if you would like to have it. I have copies of it here for anyone who would like it. Other than that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Okay, and I will open the floor for discussion. We will begin with Ms. Sandage.
I was trying to figure out, is there like a price here somewhere that we should see?
No, ma'am. This is not for any particular project. This is moving forward. And the reason for that is the time and effort involved in trying to deal with a company that they are the only source for materials and service for these products.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Walter.
Yeah, thank you for answering my questions or emails earlier. Again, just to confirm that this is for efficiency, not cost savings. Is that right?
Yes, sir. Expediency and efficiency. You got to remember today with the way the supply chain issues are, if I don't order when they have the parts and say they have the parts that day, there are many times we've already lost out on receiving parts we need to keep the schools going.
Can you refresh my memory? Do we have any other companies that are sole sourced currently?
We don't have any that are authorized. We had authorized our Spectrum Security Group a few years ago for a period of a year, but we have not updated that. It's these companies here, what you need to understand is, regardless of how you vote, these are the only companies we're getting these parts and services from. The difference is how fast and how efficient we're going to be getting our schools repaired and getting the Hussey Seating Company. They use one distributor. The closest distributor after that is in South Dakota. That's just kind of an example of how hard it is to get these. Just so that you have something to compare it to or an idea of how much we have, Hussey Seating is in our auditoriums and our gyms in probably 60% of our schools. It's very significant.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Furr?
No questions.
Ms. Blackwell?
No questions.
Well, do we need to put a time frame on it, or you think just doing it right now and then if things free back up, we...
No, ma'am. I think this just needs to be from here forward. You know, as far as the train controls go, you're looking at somewhere around 63% of all of our HVAC is train controls. It's not everything to do with train, and it's not all of the HVAC. And obviously, I personally want to bid out everything I can. But on those items and services that I cannot bid out reasonably, it's a crippling for facilities maintenance.
Okay, thank you.
Ms. Adcock?
I don't have any questions. Just, thank you for your due diligence on this.
Thank you, ma'am.
So is everyone good for the consent agenda? Yeah. Okay, you're good.
May I make a comment, Madam Chair?
Sure.
I just wanted to say thank you to Dr. Probst for that video that she presented earlier on opening day. I just can't believe she went to that much trouble to showcase all my facilities.
And they were in such good shape.
Thank you, Dr. Probst. Okay, that will be placed on the consent agenda. Okay, moving to 8.05, we will have the budget presentation and adoption for 2022-2023. We will have Mrs. Carol Herndon.
I'm sorry, Madam Chair.
Sure.
Can I ask for a recess?
Absolutely. Board, could we take a 5-minute recess? And cameraman, I'm so sorry. Can you do that for us real quick? Have you got us? Okay. Okay, that's okay. We will take a 5-minute recess and return. Okay, the Board of Education is returning from recess at our work session for Monday, the September 12th, 2022 work session, and we have Mrs. Carol Herndon at the podium for our 8.05 budget presentation and adoption for the 2022-2023 year.
Thank you. Good evening, Board. I am honored to update you on our budget process for 2022-2023. I do want to clarify that this might be a conversation that extends over tonight's meeting and the next two. The actual budget resolution was not finalized in time to post it with the announcement of this meeting. We are tweaking it right now, so I'm going to give you an overview of the process and some highlights and challenges of our budget for the current school year, and then I will bring the actual resolution to you next Monday on the 19th. If you feel led and comfortable, perhaps we could approve it then. If not, we'll hold it over to the first meeting in October. So just wanted to clarify that because that wasn't crystal clear on the agenda. So any questions about that, just want to make sure we're all on the same page there. Okay, great. So just to give you a little bit of an overview of the process, which I don't know how it's been done exactly in the past because this is my first year doing the detailed budget at Cabarrus County Schools. And I made a decision early on that I was going to be intimately involved, particularly in the development of the detailed state and local budget, because I felt like it would be a great opportunity for me to learn a lot about our district and what we have funded in the past and what needs to be funded in this school year, and just to get a real understanding of the landscape of our budget process. So I actually ended up doing both the state and local budgets by myself with a lot of input and conversations with other folks. And it was arduous. It took a long time. I asked a lot of questions. I did some things wrong, but I would not have traded that experience for anything. It opened my eyes to so many opportunities for our district, not only within the finance department, but as we continue to build collaborative connections and conversations with departments within our district office and our schools as well. So it probably delayed things a week or so coming to you, but again, I think it was an effort well worth it, and I just learned an incredible amount during that process. One thing that I wanted to mention that I was real deliberate about making sure that conversations were had by myself and between myself and other departments and schools as necessary, because it just isn't enough to budget based on last year's actual expenditures or to budget based on what we based last year. Circumstances are changing in our world and within our district, and so I tried to take the time to talk to people in developing this budget, because that's a whole lot easier than creating a budget and then demanding that be the budget that we follow. And so I would say that the budget that I will bring to you next week is appropriately conservative, and I feel like that's the only way to draft our initial budget resolution, because from an economic perspective, there is still so much uncertainty about supply chain issues, about inflation. We're seeing gas prices coming down a bit, but we don't know if that's going to remain the case. And so we were deliberately a bit maybe more conservative than we would have been in past years, making sure that we are prepared for what might be in front of us from an economic perspective. The other thing I wanted to mention, we have not finalized our strategic plan yet, but we are far enough along to understand what types of efforts and initiatives will pop out of the strategic plan, many of which we've shared already with the board, and there'll be more conversations to come about that. So we tried to make sure we understood the budget implications for 2022-2023 as it related to those emerging strategic plan themes, and make sure that those were considered in the development of the budget as well. A couple of things I want you to keep in mind just as
I talk through the overview and really the broad considerations as this budget was developed. First of all, really starting back with the staff allotment process that we finalized in the spring of this year and that Dr. Withers shared with the board with regard to the way we approached allotments this year, it became really clear to me that we made a decision as a district several years ago to staff our schools really well from an instructional perspective. So whether that's our certified staffing levels or classified staffing such as TAs, we've made a commitment to provide very solid staffing from an instructional perspective. And so that's something that we can be proud of. Obviously, I think that translates to great performance by our students, and we have to always understand what kind of budget implications that has for us. And so I learned a lot about that by digging into some of the details. I think also, as you all know, we were on a pretty sharp increase in ADM, and we'll talk about this in just a little bit more with some more figures in front of you, before COVID, and then we dipped down, and we are just now recovering in 22-23 back to the levels of pre-COVID ADM, which is great, but we did not alter our staffing during that time, which was something I think that our board can be really super proud of, because despite some pretty significant dips in ADM, we have maintained a very solid instructional staffing model. Finally, I also, alongside of the development of the state and local budgets, I also took a very deep dive look into our particularly ESSER 2 and ESSER 3 funding, what we received initially, what we have spent, what we have remaining to spend, and with your permission, I'd like to bring a more detailed analysis of that to the meeting next week along with the budget resolution, because it's pretty insightful, and I think it will help prepare the board for the decisions that we have to make to start to unwind that funding, because it does end in June of 2024, which seems really far away, but is not really far away when you think about making decisions to alternatively fund the staff positions that are currently ESSER funded. So I'm going to plan to bring that next week as well, because lots of learnings in that regard. And one thing I wanted to mention and keep in mind as we talk through the rest of the presentation, I did, through that deep dive, look at all of the different staffing and bonus decisions that were made and funded by ESSER. If there was anything funded there that I felt like was at risk for our district with regard to meeting the three-pronged test, connected to COVID and all the guidelines that we've received from the federal government about the use of those funds, I have reclassed those expenditures to another funding source, because we have a monitoring visit coming up in October of 2022 where DPI, the Department of Public Instruction, will come in and take a look at our plan and our budget and see if what we actually did matches that, and if the use of those ESSER funds was acceptable and supported. And I just felt like there were some positions in particular that were recorded there that were going to be risky for us, and so I made some adjustments to find alternative funding sources for some of those positions. So with that said, a couple of highlights, and you'll notice that the first bullet point under highlights and the first bullet point under challenges are the same on purpose. The first highlight is that our state did approve a budget that included salary and benefit provisions that were much higher than expected. That's great news for our district. Everyone in our district and everyone in every district in the state of North Carolina has received an increase in salary and benefits in this school year. So that's a big deal. There was some rumors that might be the case. I don't know that any of us believed that would actually happen. And the very good news is that our state approved a budget in mid-July of this year, which has made things so much easier in the development of this budget that I'm sharing with you tonight. Also, you probably remember back in late April, I think, when our county summarized the budget recommendation to put in front of the county commissioners. That was actually approved in June by the county commissioners, pretty much as recommended and presented initially. Did include some provisions that will be beneficial to our district. Specifically, they have a funding plan, even though those monies are not coming to us yet, but they have a funding plan within their county budget to support the continuation of our certified teacher instructional support supplement at 12%. And you know that has been not certain up until this point, but that is actually spelled out in the budget recommendation that was approved by the county commissioners, that they intend to support that effective with the 2024-2025 school year. So that's great news to hear from our county. Also, you'll recall that in last school year, 2021-2022, we did not receive an operating expense appropriation from our county. That money was great. We were grateful that it was redirected to support some deferred maintenance needs from a capital perspective, but it left about a $4 million gap in our operating expense appropriation. And in their 2022-2023 budget recommendation, they stated that they intend to reinstate that in the 2024-2025 school year. So that's the first time that that's been articulated and documented in that regard. So we didn't get it last year, we won't get it this year, we won't get it next year, but they have stated that for 2024-2025 they will make us whole again. So that's great news. And then also, as I mentioned, because they redirected that operating expense appropriation that we did not receive in 2021-2022 to some of our highest deferred maintenance needs, we saw another year where we got $7 million in appropriation for capital projects at our district from our county. So about $15 million across the last 2 years from a capital outlay perspective. So that's great news, great news. Challenges, as I mentioned, the fact that the state did approve salary and budget provisions greater than expected is a great problem to have, but as you all know, the state provides funding in that regard only for employees that are state funded. So when those salary and benefit provisions come in higher than expected, we have to absorb that in our local and federal and other budgets that we summarize. So good news, but a bit challenging as we figure out all the pieces to the puzzle. And as Mary mentioned earlier, we, as all other districts across the nation and maybe across the world, as Marion indicated, are facing and have really made our way through the national teacher shortage, which does make it difficult to budget around vacancies and hirings and the timing of all that. Sometimes along the way we felt like we were chasing that number of vacancies and what positions have been filled and how we were going to fund them, and it just added a layer of complexity and challenge to the development of the 2022-2023 budget. Also, I'm very proud that we have now created a district office structure that is more supportive of what we're trying to cause for our students, and I know that we've talked about that really ever since I came on board and have finalized that over the recent months. And so one thing that we wanted to make sure is that we had appropriate budget in the right places. So if we had 7 departments in one area and they used one budget last year and now we've split that up to better serve our students, that budget didn't stay where it was but was divided up across our new structure as appropriate. And so I worked really closely with all of my peers on cabinet to make sure that we redistributed that budget in a way that supported all of the areas that are doing work here at the district office, at all of our district office campuses, to support and serve our students. And then just finally, because we can never say it enough and remind ourselves is that going into the 2021-2022 school year, our county made it crystal clear that they expected that we leverage our fund balance, our local fund balance, and the ESSER monies that became available to our district to support operating expenses, and particularly the operating expense provision that they normally would have made for last school year. And so the good news is they've said they're going to come back and make us whole again in 2024-2025, but they've been deliberate about their expectation that we use our fund balance and the ESSER funding to support our needs. From a state perspective, a couple of pieces of information. From an ADM perspective, as I mentioned, we are now above actually where we were before COVID, which is great news after seeing what happened in 2020, 2021, and 2022. The state has already, because they approved the budget so early this year, again, such makes things so much easier for us when it happens that way. They have already processed initial allotments, and they did that assuming an ADM of 34,642 students. And you heard, I think Art said earlier, we're at 34,610. That's great news. That means we're right in line with the number of students that the state used to calculate our initial allotment. So at this point, should those enrollment numbers hold through month 1 and month 2, we would not be looking at any kind of reversion back to the state for an ADM level that was lower than what they used to base our initial allotments off of. So that's always comforting at this early stage, and we continue to keep our eyes on enrollment, but feel very good about that. You can see we're up about 300 kiddos even since the 6th of September when I finalized this presentation. So that's great news. And then you'll see the historical ADM, just for your reference, listed there. So we have grown, and we are looking at an aggressive growth number for this year, and it is materializing in our enrollment numbers as we sit here on the 10th day of school. Just as a reminder, and as I mentioned earlier, every employee in our district will benefit from a salary increase this year because of the state's gracious provisions. For certified staff, the average increase is 4.2%, and that is both an increase in years of service and also in just the scale in general. And so, and that ranged across the steps from 0 all the way to 25 plus. There were some levels that saw 6 and 7% increases, other steps that saw much lower increases, but on average across all of our certified staff, a 4.2% increase. Principals were at 4%. Assistant principals, they follow the teacher increases, so an average of 4.2%. And then finally, for all of our classified staff, the greater of moving them to $15 an hour or a 4% increase, the greater of those two. And so one thing just to mention, and this really underscores why it is so critically important that we move forward with the salary study. When we move that starting salary, it creates a real traffic jam in our scales. And so when we moved our beginning pay to $15 per hour for almost all of our classified positions, we saw employees at step 0, $15, making the same as folks at step 11 and 12, and we have to fix that. That's part of the problem that Art was describing earlier as it relates to the ability to attract and retain bus drivers. And as Marion indicated, the same dynamic is happening with our custodians and our school nutrition staff and our Kids Plus staff, and so we've got to figure that out. So I'm super excited that we're having our initial conversation this week, and that we can soon bring to you a plan of action for how to go about and understand what's the price tag of making it right. Not only paying ranges that are market competitive, but building scales that have the proper amount of salary increase between each step. Just really excited. The state had mentioned that this would be an ongoing, recurring funding effort, and they proved that they were going to put their money where their mouths were. The board probably remembers that part of last year's budget included a $1.6 million allotment from the state to provide an additional supplement to our certified staff above and beyond the 12% that they get locally. And we paid about $475 per certified staff member under that provision. So that has, to my knowledge, never happened where the state provided funding to support a supplement above and beyond the local supplement. So in addition to the 12% that was funded as normal, we also were able to pay an additional supplement with these state funds. That allotment is in fact working in this year's state budget, and we got about $1 million more from the state to support that. So we're at $2.6 million, and we'll soon be bringing in front of the board our recommendation for how to pay that out to our certified staff. So really glad to see that that in fact is supported now for the second year in a row. Also, the state was very responsive to the need to consider an increase in our school safety grants, and they have really, and I don't remember the number off the top of my head, I want to say increased by $40 million across all of North Carolina the provision that they were going to fund for school safety. And so we were, I think, appropriately aggressive in our grant that we have already written and submitted to the state to make sure that we do everything that we can do to protect and keep safe our students and our staff. And then this I know has not happened in a long time because all of the LEAs in North Carolina experienced difficulties in spending money last year because of supply chain issues, and we talked about this, and remember I celebrated our schools and our departments for being nimble and planning to buy this, but this wasn't going to be delivered in time, so regrouping and strategically identifying a new expenditure in a meaningful way. And a lot of folks left a lot of money on the table. We did not, I'm proud to say, but a lot of folks did, and they actually allowed carryover in some of those spending buckets from last year to this year to acknowledge the fact that it was just very difficult last year to spend money as planned and not do it in a careless, just to spend it way. So that was unusual and I think responsive by our state. From a local perspective, keeping in mind what I shared earlier and reminded us of with regard to our county's expectation that we use fund balance. Right now, in our appropriately conservative budget, we have a fund balance appropriation of right at $5 million. And so I summarized why that is happening and why we would have a budget that would indicate that we would dip into fund balance by $5 million. The first is that $4 million gap in operating expense appropriation that first happened and impacted 21-22, but has a carryover effect into this school year and the next as well. Also, we quantified that the higher than expected state salary and benefit provisions had about a $500,000 impact on our local budget, so that we can honor those raises, as I just summarized, for our locally funded staff. And then we had requested about $1.5 million in continuation budget request from our county that were not funded, most of which related to deliberate ask around what we expected from an inflation perspective, primarily in rising fuel costs and also construction and maintenance repair costs as it relates to lumber and all the materials that are just experiencing significant cost increases. So if you add all those up, you could easily justify a fund balance appropriation more than $5 million, but we currently have it working in at $5 million. So just so you could see what that looks like, I did a very preliminary fund balance roll forward for the board. This is not final because we are finishing up our audit of fiscal year ended June 30th, 2022. Our auditors were here last week. They got in and out in 3 days, which is always a great sign. It was a very successful audit, but they are finalizing the completion of our financial statements. So none of this is blessed yet, but I feel very comfortable sharing it with you. At the end of June 30th, 2021, fund balance was just under $16 million. This is when the county started to have conversations with our district about that being a bit heavy. And since we had all that fund balance, how could we keep asking them for more funding? Not an unusual conversation between a county and a school district. Preliminarily, for last school year, you'll probably remember, you might remember that in our initial budget resolution, we thought we would have a fund balance appropriation of $3.2 million. Right now, we're less than that for last school year, just under $2 million. And then also, the board graciously funded out of fund balance the turf fields at Concord and Mount Pleasant, which have been well received by those schools in our community. So at the end of June 30th, 2022, we are looking at a preliminary fund balance of just right at $10,500,000. And then if this fund balance appropriation that's working in the initial budget resolution materializes, we would be looking at a projected fund balance at the end of FY23 of about $5,500,000. So that's a lot lower than $16 million. I do believe that that is an appropriate level of fund balance for our district. And the good news is we do have and have had a pretty solid fund balance in the $1.5–2 million range in our special revenues account as well. That is spendable by the board as well. So this is just local, and I think we certainly have done what was expected of us with regard to conversations with the county, and I know that that's a long way from $16 million to $5.5 million, but I'm not uncomfortable at $5.5. And again, I feel confident that at this early stage of the game, it is an appropriately conservative budget, and perhaps we won't need to go $5 million into fund balance. We'll keep up with that as we move throughout the year and as we bring budget amendments to you. And then I've really already said this as it relates to ESSER. As a reminder, ESSER 1 is already fully spent as intended, and so no further conversation is really necessary there. Although all the ESSER buckets 1, 2, and 3 are subject to the monitoring visit that is going to happen in October of 2022. So we have a cross-functional team, myself, Mary Beth, Marion, and many others that are working to prepare for that monitoring visit. It is data intensive. What they ask for is a bit overwhelming, but I feel great that we have incredible documentation with regard to the plan, the budget, and then evidence that the money that we have spent is driving the outcomes that we intended. And if it didn't, we can explain why. And so I was sort of thinking that this was going to happen in November, and then we got the letter and they said October, and I'm like, gosh, that's just a couple of weeks away. But I feel really good that our collaborative effort will have us well prepared and well documented. And I have had some conversations with our regional federal contact, and they are being incredibly easy to work with in this regard. It does not come across as a punitive effort. It's overwhelming just in the number of buckets of money that they're reviewing and the detailed information that they're asking for to support their review. But they recognize that LEAs across the state were given a lot of funding really fast with a lot of rules and regulations and a lot of choices about how to spend it. And so they're not coming in here to beat us up. They're coming in here to take a look, and if something needs to be tweaked, they're going to give LEAs time to tweak and consider and come back and look again. So I feel great about the work that we're doing to prepare. I feel great about the partnership. that's what you can call it, with the DPI federal programs folks, and looking forward to sharing the results of what I know will be a successful monitoring visit with DPI when they're here in October. And I want to bring a little bit more information about ESSER to the board next Monday, just to kind of summarize what I saw when I dug into things. For our other funds, really no unusual budget considerations or challenges as it related to our school nutrition beyond what Stephanie has so graciously shared in conversations before now. Also, Kids Plus, and our capital outlay and our revenue, but our special revenue. Nothing unusual or challenging at all in those budgets to report. Pretty much business as usual there. And so in summary, and as it relates to next steps, I will be bringing the official initial budget resolution to the board for consideration on the 19th. If it's the right time to approve it, great. If not, we are in fine shape to wait and have it on the agenda for the first meeting in October and hopefully approve it there. I did want to share with the board, taking a little bit of a liberty here that I did not ask permission to do, but I'm not a real fan of the format of our initial budget resolution or the amendments that follow. It's several pages long. I find it hard to read. It's hard to present to you all as well. And so perhaps if you could bring up the other document that's, it's an Excel spreadsheet. Yeah, there. I just wanted to share this. And you can provide feedback. Make that a little bit. There we go. Yeah. So what I've tried to do is list all funds on one page. And so it's exactly the same information that the board normally gets in initial budget resolution and in amendments going forward. But basically, you'll see the different funds across the top. There's a section for expenditures, and then there's also a section for revenue. And that's exactly what's presented to you today. It's just across about 10 or 15 different pages. So my intention was not to provide an eye chart that's difficult to read, but sort of a one-stop shop for you to see all of the funds, the expenditures that have been budgeted, and the revenues as well. And so just think about this. You can send me your feedback. You can share it now. If it's too much, we can use what we've always used. I just wanted to provide an alternative source because I found that having all this information in a quick snapshot might be a whole lot easier for you all, not only from an initial budget resolution perspective, but also the amendments that we make across the year. So something to consider. One thing I wanted to mention before we close and just get my notes. The good news is that working in the budget that I'll bring next week, about 62% of our budgeted expenditures are related to instruction, which is good. That's what we're in the business to do, and so we want to see that number. That's very comparable with prior years. About 17% relates to district-wide support for our schools, and then 17% is capital outlay, which is great news as well. And then the composition of our revenue remains pretty similar as well. About 51% of our revenue from the state, about 37% from our county, which again, compared to other counties in our state, is very gracious and very generous and something that we should be very proud of. And then about 11% in federal. Our federal funding is going down because there's not a lot of new ESSER monies that are emerging for 22-23, and the timeline on spending the ones that we've already received is ticking towards that June 30th, 2024 deadline. So just wanted to share that. And with that, I'll be glad to answer any questions.
Okay, so we are definitely placing this on action for next week, and I'll just open the floor with discussions, and I'll begin with Ms. Sandage.
Couple questions.
Sure.
So will there be an RFP for this study that we're referring to, the salary study that we're referring to, or have we already selected a vendor?
We have not. We don't have to do an RFP for services like that, like this one, and usually these are boutique sole service providers anyway. But Marion has reached out to a couple of folks that we will talk to, but they're not really addressing what we're asking for. I will tell you, when I did the similar work at Rowan Salisbury Schools, we paid about $19,500. So that's a little bit of a benchmark. Pretty economical study. It's hard to find people to do what we're asking them to do in public education.
Okay, and just to summarize what you just presented to us, so we kind of did a timeline of where we come from throughout this year and the previous year, and then we're going to get more information. Do I understand that?
The actual budget resolution will
Okay.
come next week.
Okay, so
Yes,
just
ma'am.
a summary right now. This is what
This
it's
is just
looking
an
like.
overview of the process.
Okay.
That's right.
And then the other question I had was about the fund balance. So when I look at this, and this is just bare bones, I'm not a CPA. So, yeah, okay. When I look at this, I see that we've spent, maybe a little over half or more than half of the fund balance, right? And so my brain is asking me, or I'm questioning whether or not we'll do that next year too. And then if we're at $5 million, a little over $5 million in our fund balance right now, I'm trying to make this make sense.
I understand what you're saying.
Okay, yeah. So
Right.
how are we safe? Because I remember early on when you first came, I asked you what's a healthy fund balance, and you said about $9 million. You said there's $5 million in one place and then $2 million in another place. So okay, now.
I understand your question. So, if nothing changed, we would be looking at another fund balance appropriation next year. But one of the reasons and one of the greatest benefits from going through this process at the detailed level that I did personally is I feel a whole lot more prepared to have a different conversation with our county as we go in front of them with an ask for 2023, 2024. So will they respond? I don't know, but I feel comfortable, and I know that I've had this conversation with Dr. Kopicki as well. We understand a lot more about what we need and what we have, and hopefully can have a different kind of conversation with them that has evolved over the past couple of years. I can't say with certainty, but that's my plan, is that we have a different conversation with our county about our funding needs.
Okay, so
But
that
I won't know till we get there.
Gotcha. Just for record, that concerns me.
I understand.
The other question I had may be for Dr. Bish. If we're going to do a salary study, but yet maybe our website doesn't match the actual need, is that conducive to doing a salary study? And let me make that make sense. If our website says that we need 140 bus drivers or educators or whatever that might be, but we only actually need this amount, like, that doesn't make sense to me. So is our website currently correct on how many vacancies we have in a specific area? And if it's not, why is that the case?
Yeah, I can't speak to that, but I will tell you that what I hear you saying is actually a combination between our allotment work and how we pay people. And those worlds need to come together. And so we made a lot of progress in creating allotment formulas that have been socialized with our principals and within our district, and we're working our way towards allotments that are in line with those formulas that Dr. Withers presented a few months ago. And then alongside that would be paying those folks what is market competitive. And so I think that's what you're asking. I don't know if the numbers on the website are accurate.
So I'll answer that question, Ms. Sandage. They are not, because they lag us getting people approved and then in the building and then going back and cleaning up the website. There's no software that automatically pulls a position off of there. We have to manually do that. So it does lag that. And so that, now that we're through the major of the hiring, that's our next step, is to clean up those numbers. But that's a moving target that changes every day. So the numbers I give you, I pulled today as to exact positions that we have that are not yet a body in them. what's on the website may be what principals ask to be posted, but they don't always close it and pull it down when they hire, so we have to go back and do some cross-checking with that. So the numbers I give you are the accurate ones. And then we clean up the website, which hasn't been done because we have been hiring to get school opened.
Y'all know we get judged on that, right? So somebody will say, well, y'all got 150 vacancies, and then they're fussing at us for why we got that many vacancies, but that's not really the case. And I say that to say, if we can clean that up a little faster, I think it would be good or behoove us to do that. My last question is in relation to, so, and I, help me understand this, and it might be you, Dr. Bish, again, so just in case. So if we've got, let's say we need 12 EC teachers, right? And we've got 6 EC teachers holding the weight of those 12 EC teachers. What is the likelihood, and we may already be doing this, and we may already be doing this in every situation, what is the likelihood that the weight that those EC teachers, and I mean this across the board, not just EC teachers, the likelihood that the salary that's not being spent right now on those teachers that we cannot hire accommodate what double work those staff are doing? Oh, okay, I'm making sense. Good.
You're making perfect sense, and that is what we were talking about earlier about paying people extra. So when, let's use EC as an example. So let's suppose I have 2 EC classes. I have 1 teacher. I have not filled the other one. We are continuing to try to fill it, but this teacher agrees to do a double caseload. And so that teacher is going to take both classes. That teacher receives a significant pay increase, and we hire another teacher assistant. And EC is working to put in place assistance with writing the IEPs to take a heavy load of the paperwork off of that EC teacher. So that is the model that we're using when we have an extended reach teacher, where that teacher is agreeing to do 2, but in return, we are paying you significantly. We're taking that vacant lapse salary, that salary for the other teacher. We're going to pay the teacher that's doing a double load extra a lot. We're going to then take the rest of that money that is sitting there, and we're going to hire a teacher assistant. So now you've got a double load, but I'm going to give you another person to help you. And in the case of EC, we're going to give you help with doing the paperwork.
Okay, I understand that, and this may not need to happen right now because I know you guys are doing a lot right this minute, but I would truly like to understand what that looks like across the board. So if we're doing that for bus driver shortage, I want to see what that looks like. If we're doing that for teachers, what, and I mean like the real numbers is what I'm asking for.
Yeah, and we can, and it depends on if I have a position and 2 teachers, each take half. So we get creative, and we look at what's the need, how do we fill the need, and then what are the appropriate ways to compensate people to do that. So we have a number of models for that, but again, this is what we've done only with master teachers. People who are experienced, beginning teachers certainly would not be eligible for this, and only when a teacher says that they are willing to do that. This is not a requirement for any teacher to do that. So we are very strategic about when that happens, and only when it is absolutely necessary to have a qualified and quality teacher in a classroom with students. So yes, I'll be glad to sit down with you and share with you. Dr. Williams has worked on this. Carol has worked on this. We have a sheet and all the steps that have to go through. There has to be permission first, a plan, names, everything. But this is how we're staffing. And it's really a model that the state, we actually are writing a grant so that we can look at some of these things for advanced teacher roles and leadership roles for teachers to take on more responsibility.
It doesn't happen without we have a formal process, which I'm really proud of. It isn't just a phone call. There's lots of people involved. There's a form that has to be filled out. There's levels of approval, and we partner with our principals to find a way.
Just know I'm interested in knowing what that looks like, and when you have some time, I'd love to see it.
Absolutely.
And thank y'all for taking the time to do this, because this is what we don't get to hear. We hear that teachers are overworked, and we hear a lot of that stuff, but to know there's behind the scenes work happening to make sure we try to compensate for that extra work, we just need to highlight those things.
Thank you.
Mr. Walter?
Yeah, I appreciate the presentation. I appreciate the honesty. I appreciate the transparency. I think that's really good. But I look at these numbers and they raise extreme red flags for me on this fund balance stuff. We're relying on the county to do something in the 24-25 school year, and there's no guarantees on any of that. It all depends on a vote by a group of people that aren't even elected yet. So I'm not that's not really acceptable to me where I'm at. And when I look at this, you have that one chart where you have the fund balance as of June 30th at 5.4 million estimated. Granted, it could be up, it could be down, but we still have the 23-24 school year before you get to the 24-25 school year. And if we're at this 5.4 level, we're in violation of our own policy. But we can't do that. I mean, our policy says we have to have 1 month's operating expense, which is 8% at a minimum, according to the LGC, and that would be 5.8 as I calculated it today, which will be probably higher than that come 3 or 4 years from now. So I'm really concerned with that. I think we're spending a whole lot more than I mean, fund balance, you can understand you spend it for one-time expense, but if you're using it for a recurring operating expense, that's really troubling to me. And then the issues we had this summer talking about school nutrition being a deficit of $800 to $1 million. How do we handle that? Where does that money come from? You can ask the county for it.
Well, as Stephanie has said several times, we're tweaking her model constantly, and a lot will depend on how she sees revenue materialize. So we're keeping our eye on that, and I don't disagree with anything that you're saying. This is a dilemma that this district has been facing since 2021-2022. So I don't know the answer to that, but I will bring in front of the board next week when I bring the official budget resolution choices that could be made, like things we won't fund, none of which will be pleasant in the moment. So
Right.
I understand, completely understand. I don't think that there is unnecessary or frivolous spending. I'm confident that that's not the case, but we are...
But our budget process, and I'm sorry to interrupt, but our budget process has always been continuation and expansion. It's never been, well, let's see what we're spending and should we still spend it on that? Like, is there?
I think that's the only way to address your concern.
Right, and I hope that we do look at that this year. I really do.
I understand.
But even with that, you're going to have to go to the county. I mean, this is a partnership. We cannot operate without an agreement here with the county to fund our priorities.
Absolutely. And I do feel personally, I feel in a better position to have a different conversation with the county than I had last year, because a lot of this I'm just now understanding and knowing, and this has been an ongoing conversation with the county for a while, and not always a comfortable one.
Well, they have a set number. We ask for 3 times that all the time, and that's not right. You're never going to make it
right.
Come
And
to an
so,
agreement
and then in one year we didn't get anything, and so that just made that more challenging. But yeah, I mean, hard choices will have to be made in order to make sure that we don't completely eliminate fund balance. You're absolutely right.
So I've got lots of concerns with committing to doing that, especially with it this far out. But again, I appreciate the conversation.
Sure.
I appreciate the being honest with us
Absolutely.
and giving us the facts. So thank you.
Nothing but.
Mr. Furr?
Yeah, I just appreciate you just sharing reality to us. I mean, that's all we ask for. We'll deal with it. The county has always been generous to us, and they will make sure that we continue to get what we really need to function as a school system. So, thank you.
You're welcome. Ms. Blackwell?
I'll just kind of ditto. It is concerning for sure, but I definitely appreciate you being transparent with us, and I think that that's the best way to kind of tackle all of this, is just look at it as a whole right now and then address it head on as we keep moving forward. So thank you, Carol, for all your hard work.
Ms. Carpenter?
I have to say, I have some of the same concerns that Rob has. I get kind of antsy when I see our fund balance get that low, because I suppose that's a little of the accounting coming, or accounting coming out in me. Again, I don't like to see that. I hope that maybe next year that I can maybe get back on. I had been on the budget committee for when they set it up. I did enjoy that, but that is one of the concerns I had. I know that we did want to get those fields done, which we did do, but still, when we get that low, that worries me, especially when we know where nutrition, where that program's going, and so we'll just have to watch it. But I have been on the board so many years. I know when things got tough, we had to, we really had to buckle down and do some things we didn't want to do. But one thing I have been very proud of, when things did get tough, we really were very fortunate that we did not have to. We took care of the employees first, and so we really were real careful about that. But when we can do something, we do. And so one of the things, like I say, I really appreciate what work you have done and to show us what we got and what we don't have. So thank you for your report.
Ms. Adcock?
Yeah, thank you. I know that sometimes it's hard to hear the reality of things, but with the rest of the board, when I say that, thank you for the hard work, and I know there's probably going to be more of that to come. I would like to ask if there's been any updates on the Healthy Meals, Healthy Kids Act. I know that that's a program
Not
that.
to my knowledge, John. Yeah.
Not that I'm aware of.
I think
Okay.
that's. I don't have much hope there.
Okay. And then there was another one I saw. It's called Every Child Deserves Nutritional School Meals. And that was something else that was being at the federal level.
I'll check on that. I'm not
Okay.
familiar with that.
Just thinking about additional monies that may come in to help with the food
Anytime, yeah.
situation. Thank you, though. Thank you for the presentation.
Thank you. So we'll finish this presentation next Monday, and if the board members have any other questions or information that you'd like to have, make sure you get it emailed out so that we'll be prepared next Monday.
Please do.
Thank you.
Great, thank you.
Moving to 8.06, approval of the E-rate purchase requisition. We'll have Mr. Ben Allred to the podium. Good evening.
Good evening. So I did want to answer a couple of questions and kind of put it into context. So the first thing is what E-rate is. So there's two categories of E-rate. There's category 1, which funds all of our internet. The good news is that doesn't come out of Cabarrus County Schools budget. That is a partnership with the feds and the state. The second category is called Category 2 funding. We get that on a 5-year rotating cycle. 2021 to 25 is our current cycle. That's $5.9 million, and we can use that for infrastructure updates to our system. It's also not Cabarrus County Schools money. That comes directly from the feds and the state. So each year there's a formal process. That process starts in the fall, October, November. We bid out the projects that we're going to do for the year. That gets solidified in January. Our main focus is for this is switches and access points. See this little thing on the ceiling right here? That's called an access point. We have 3,900 of those around our district. That gives you your internet. The switches, if you've ever been into one of those closets and seen all the cables that plug into those, we have around 300 plus of those switches at our 44 schools plus non-school sites. So you can see this is a pretty large one. It's $1 million and change, maybe right under that, but we have $5.9 million to spend over 5 years. If we did more than the amount we have, we wouldn't be able to complete the work in a year, so we split that work up over the 5 years. One of the questions that Mr. Walter asked was, why is this so early? Because the bid comes in January. That's when they're due. I checked with Kyle, who's our ANC rep, and if we were to requote this or change it to match October, we would lose pricing, which there have been price hikes. So I did check just to kind of give you illustrative purposes. a 6410 switch. Don't know what that is, don't know what it looks like, but that's the model number. In 2021, those were about $7,500 a piece, and in 2022, those are $9,900 a piece. So that just kind of gives you an idea of what we're looking at, and I'll answer any questions you have related to that, but ask for your approval on that purchase.
Thank you, and I will begin with Ms. Adcock.
I don't have any questions or comments. Thank you for your time on this and putting this together.
Ms. Carpenter?
Is there going to be any delay in getting these? You know, you keep hearing about the chips. You can't get them. Are we going to have any trouble getting these?
So one of the things we've done recently on this particular one is there's a one with a Bluetooth module and one without, and we can get the one without a Bluetooth module much faster. We do have delays in those, and so we work with our rep, we work with the vendor, and one of my engineers, Mickey Farmer, who many of you may know, sends voluminous emails to document our work to get those, and that works. And they tend to find us inventory from other locations and get it to us. But yes, that is a concern always. It's getting better.
Ms. Blackwell?
So DPI is going to reimburse us.
Correct.
When does that come in? Like, how long does it take for them to reimburse us for that?
It usually comes in 2 different allotments, around like November, December, and March, April.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Mr. Furr? Mr. Walter?
I just appreciate you taking time to answer my questions, help me understand this a little
No
better.
problem. Thank you for asking them.
Ms. Sandich?
I'll keep with the tradition, no questions.
Okay.
Okay, we will place this on the action agenda for next. I'm sorry.
Is it consent?
Well, I thought we had decided we weren't going to do any type of those. Okay. Action. Moving to 8.03, Soft Choice Annual Contract for Microsoft Office, and we'll keep you again.
Sure. So I think the first thing I wanted to point out is what we're purchasing. So Dr. Kapicki is on Microsoft Teams. We're using Microsoft PowerPoint. If you're on a Windows machine, you use Windows, and we all use Outlook, PowerPoint, Word, and then there's a lot of other things that we use. OneNote, there's a program called Visio that lets us do flow charts. There's other list programs. On the back end, over in accountability, Deepti, Anna, Brian Doss, Matthew Fail, this also funds our SQL or SQL databases, which allows them to do all of the data that they pull out of PowerSchool to make all of our systems work. It's also cybersecurity, catches things before they happen to us on the front end. It allows us to do things like Microsoft Remote Desktop, which means that I can work on a Macintosh computer, but also log into a virtual Windows machine when I need to do troubleshooting and support. So this has not come to the board before because until this year, it's been below our threshold of $250,000. So a combination of things does that. This is on state contract. Our district grows, as you know, and see every year. So this year it went over the amount, $250,000, so it comes to the board for approval. I did a little bit of quick math. It comes out about $59 per staff member. We have about 4,100 machines that we run Outlook and all these different ones on there. All of our students are included in that for free. So students use all of the Microsoft products and PowerPoint and everything for free, if you will, which comes out to about $7.50 per user per year, which gives us tons of free space. I think every user in our district gets 1 terabyte of space, which if you know what that is, you'll never use that in your entire life unless you're a crazy YouTuber. But that just gives you a little bit of context about what that is. This price is guaranteed until 2024, at which time Soft Choice and the other vendors with the state will renegotiate their state contract, and we'll go back and do exactly what you just talked about with Carol, which is look at the product, make sure that we're happy with the service, make sure it meets our needs, and look at the other things on state contract for us.
Okay, I'll open the floor, and I'll begin with Ms. Sandich.
So this additional $34,000,
I missed that.
did I see, this is an additional $34,000 from last year?
That's correct.
Somewhere around there?
That's correct.
So we found that somewhere? Like, did it drop off the sky? Where did that come
Rob
from?
asked me that same question, and so I'll tell you the way we work our budget, and I think most departments do this, is we sit down each year and we look at what things cost. What are license increases going to cost? What computers do we need? And then we work within the budget that we have. So Rob asked me this question this morning. I can't tell you exactly what was cut, It also wasn't my budget from last year, but I can say is I sit down and look at what we need, I look at what we have, and I talk to this lady right here to make sure that the ends can meet, but we stay within our budget.
So you found it somewhere. Okay, thanks.
Mr. Walter?
My questions have been answered. Thank you.
Good question.
Ms. Blackwell?
I'm good, thank you, Ben.
Ms. Carpenter?
I have no question.
Ms. Adcock? Okay, I will place this as well on action. And we will move to
One more.
one more, absolutely. 8.08, Apple replacement cycle purchase.
So another time I want to give you a little bit of context. So you all probably remember Carolyn, maybe in the May or June meeting, said, are we going to apply for that ECF funding? Do you remember saying that, Carolyn? So ECF is emergency connectivity funding that comes from the federal, FCC, Federal Communications Commission. So we did apply for funding in the round 3 for $1 million. We were awarded money in round 1 and round 2 to $3.8 million. We purchased 12,000 student devices in November and February of 21 and 22. That's about a third of our student use. We have 35,000 students, give or take. We carry around 38,500 devices. So 12,000 essentially takes care of about a third of that. If you've been on this board for a while, you know what usually gets asked of you this year is to approve a lease or finance over time. So we did not have to finance that $3.8 million worth of student computers, but we still have the same budget annually to purchase devices. So this year, this one is a little simpler. We need our Apple devices refreshed. We are on a 3-year cycle. This is actually our largest cycle year. We are not evenly split. So each year when we refresh our staff devices, we don't do 1/3, 1/3, 1/3 of our staff. And that is a longer conversation as to why. Just know that Carol and I are trying to work that to make that a little bit more manageable year to year. But this year, it's a large, I think it's 9 or 13 of our schools in 3 departments. So schools are some elementary, middle, and high, plus student services, EC, and EC, curriculum instruction, and student services. But I also wanted to give you a little bit of data that just kind of helps with the 1,500 devices, because it always helps me to put it in perspective. I told you we have 35,000 student devices. We probably carry 3,000 to 4,000 computers for staff, and that's across all schools and departments. We have 3,700 security cameras, some right above my head. No audio, but we pick those up. We have over 3,000 TVs and projectors. We have 830 phones, which includes around 500 for administrators, teachers, SROs, plus another 300 phones that we support our bus drivers on. Tons of printers, copiers, software. Like I said, we have over 3,900 of these, plus 300 switches, and we have around 3,900 desk phones. And that's just kind of what I could think of real quick. We support a lot of devices, and I know that Matt Lacey and our engineering and tech team supports a lot of you all with your devices as well, as they do me. One of the things about our Apple purchase that I wanted to point out is Apple guarantees us buyback on the back end. So we spend around $779 on a Apple MacBook Air. We are guaranteed a $320 buyback at the end of 3 years of use. So if you've ever been around a teacher and watched how he or she uses their device, that device gets abused, used, taken home. It can be dropped or broken twice a year free of charge. If that battery life ever goes below 80%, we get a replacement for that. And Apple are amazing partners. And with all that said, at the end of 3 years of hard use, they'll give us $320 or more for that device. So we have a guaranteed buyback on the back end of that, which is really a fantastic program with Apple. We don't get that same buyback on our Chromebooks. The last set of Chromebooks we sold, we got about $15 per Chromebook on average, but they essentially buy it back by weight. So that gives you a little bit of context as to our Apple purchase. So I'll be glad to be quiet and answer any questions.
Okay, I'll begin with Ms. Adcock.
Okay, thank you for the presentation. So you said these are on a 3-year cycle.
That's correct.
Okay, so when they do the buyback, does that just go back into the funds for
So,
that repurchase for the next cycle?
And I'll tell you, I haven't gone through that cycle yet. Carol and I will work on that. Our main thing is that money comes back and helps reduce the cost. So essentially, when we go through the next time and we sell those devices, when we get our next quote, we can apply that however we will. Say it again.
It's a source of funding for the next
it's a source of funding for our next purchase. Apple partners with a particular vendor. We go with a local vendor, Cortec, who is a fantastic partner for us. They buy back a ton of stuff. We sold, I was actually pulled this up just so I could show it with you, 4,700, 2,900. So we just sold back in December and April last year about 7,000 devices to them, and they come to our schools, they pick them up, they grade each one. So I have a full list of what that looks like. Those are typically old devices. These devices we plan to resell back, so we get a guaranteed back for those. The ones last summer that you approved were a $200 per device, so we got a better deal this year with a $320 buyback versus a $200 buyback.
Well, thank you for that. It's really, it's good to see that we are getting that kind of money back for the used equipment that we have. So thank you for sharing that.
Ms. Carpenter? Did we get the money? Did we go get that money?
So the reason that, and the reason, I'm glad you brought that back around. The reason we're asking for this in September and not July is because we did not. So round 3 funding for the $1 million ended up going to more high poverty districts and the 85% plus reimbursement, and we're a 60% reimbursement district. So we did not get that. So that's why I'm here in September rather than asking for this in July, which means it's also a delay for our teachers in getting their refreshed devices, which they have normally had in their hands in August.
Do we have this money though? Where are we going to get this money?
We have the money, and the reason we have the money is because we did not have to purchase student devices this year.
Okay, well that's why I wanted to know where we were going to get it from.
Yeah, the first place I go with anything is straight to Carol, so we can make sure and work that out.
Okay,
but it's within our budget.
That's why I wanted to know where we were going to get it from. If we've got it, okay.
Yes, ma'am.
All right.
Ms. Blackwell?
No question, thank you.
Mr. Furr? Mr. Walter?
My questions have been answered, thank you.
Ms. Sandage?
Ms. Carolyn asked my question, so I have no questions.
Okay.
Mr. Walter, I am just so thrilled that you got your questions answered.
Mrs. Grimsley?
Hey, it's his birthday.
It's his birthday.
Mr. Walter and I go way back. I think
birthday.
Mr. Walter and I started the same year, back in 2012.
That's good, that's good. Thank you, Ben.
Mrs. Grimsley?
Yes, sir.
Ben, if I'm correct in our assessment, we're actually under budget on this item, correct? By a few $100,000? On the Apple replacement, we actually came in under budget what we budgeted, correct?
It is less than what we would have normally spent, yes.
Thank you.
Okay, and with that actually concludes our business. Dr. Fickey, while we still have you, would you like to inform the board that you'll be presenting the numbers on the report card and the reports that came out next Monday night?
Yeah, so next week we will do a presentation on the state assessments. And as we informed the board roughly a week ago, and as was stated in the press, our students, our teachers did very well on those assessments. We'll break those down for the board and the public in a presentation next week. So thank you.
Thank you. All right, and with that, that concludes the business portion of our work session, and I would ask that we have a motion for the board to convene in closed session to consult with an attorney and preserve the attorney-client privilege pursuant to General Statute 143-31811A3, and to consider confidential personnel matters pursuant to General Statute 143-31811A6.
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion by Ms. Adcock and a second by Ms. Carpenter. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Hearing none, that motion passes unanimously. And with that, we will say good night to our viewing audience, and we will see you Monday, September the 19th at 6 o'clock. Thank you and good night.